My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Ben Bugale, and you're listening to pixelprojectradio, a video game and video game club style podcast where we discuss and play through, not necessarily in that order, the games that we, that you, that all of us love. And today, we're talking about a particularly interesting game. Rick, what are we talking about?
Oh, this one has been a long time coming, and I think we've both been kind of itching to talk about it. We're talking about Undertale, created by Toby Fox. And it's kind of timely, isn't it, since its 6th birthday just came and went?
It sure did, as of the 15th of September, that's right.
Yeah, we're recording this in real time on the 18th, so just a couple days post. And just after the announcement, I don't know about release, but the announcement of Deltarune Chapter 2.
That's correct. Deltarune, the first part came out in 2018, and he's had us waiting for Chapter 2 to come out. It literally just, I think, was released to play as of yesterday. So that's kind of wild timing.
Oh, wow. I actually haven't played Deltarune Chapter 1. I played a tiny bit of it, but it was one of those situations where I put it down for like a week, and I had like real troubles coming back to it, you know? And I don't know, I didn't want to restart it, but so much time has passed that, you know, why not? What better time?
And with you freshly finishing and going through Undertale, and with us about to discuss it, it's a great time to kind of dig it back up and slap it down on the table and take a big old bite out of Deltarune.
Oh, a big old bite. We're going to take a big old bite and then lay on the floor and feel like garbage, as we are wont to do.
That's exactly right. After a ghost sandwich, of course.
Yeah. Speaking of Undertale, when did you first play this game? Like, how long has this game been with you?
This game has been with me since 2015. So it has been literally since it came out. I bought it almost immediately. I don't remember if I watched Video Game Donkey's Undertale first or if I just jumped in and started playing. But yeah, this game's been with me, and it came at a really, if I'm just going to speak candidly here, it came at a really challenging time in my life. So it spoke to me on a number of levels. But when was your first encounter with the ruins and so forth?
Oh, same. It was in 2015. It was the first game that I played in grad school during my master's in, I don't remember exactly what month, but it was the first semester in 2015. It definitely was after seeing Donkey's Undertale video. And I remember being super thankful that my shitty laptop that was like dying could actually handle it. And yeah, I did a full run through of all 3 routes. I must have done it multiple times because I have like 80 hours logged on my Steam. And I don't know how. And then I played this playthrough on Switch, which honestly, much better. This works so well as a handheld game. Way better.
I would agree. To be honest, whenever I was replaying this for the podcast, I found myself not frustrated, but kind of like, oh, this is clunky. I'm used to the buttons. I like the buttons. I'm like Steve Harvey. I like all the buttons. But what actually ended up happening is that I found myself with the Pro controller on Switch. It was so automatic and so ergonomic and just, it just worked.
Yeah, and I think having sticks can make some of those bullet hell sections, particularly if you're going in the pacifist or genocide route where they get a little bit trickier, it can make those a little bit easier than using like a membrane or even a mechanical keyboard like the arrow buttons, you know?
I would agree. I mean, the stick, there were some moments where it felt like they were a little bit unruly in a few fights. I will save that for later. But generally, I felt like my reaction time as I got used to it became better than what I used with a keyboard some 6 years ago. 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. Do you want to get into our personal reviews?
I would love to. After you, Richard.
Oh, of course. We're playing it that way. Okay, I see. I smell ya. I can smell what you're putting down.
Smells like sushi.
Oh. All right. So this isn't my best one sentence, but it doesn't actually matter. So Though it doesn't do anything new or groundbreaking, Undertale is a work that subverts expectations, pays homages, and is ultimately a love letter to RPGs by someone who knows and loves them himself. This for me is an easy 9 out of 10.
I will not contest that in any way, shape, or form. Not that it's my job to do so, but I will read to you my review now. A blend of wit, humor, imagination, curiosity, and most importantly, fun, Undertale takes us to a world we never realized we needed to visit. Toby Fox shows us the beauty of talking over fighting with brilliant writing, unforgettable characters, and a through line that's second to none. For me, this is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I was thinking about this whenever it came down to the number, because as we've talked about before, like, the number rating in our show is nice to do as a means of getting into discussion. But, you know, the numbers by themselves ultimately don't mean a whole lot. And I was thinking, like, what can I give this game? Like, is it a critical look at the game in terms of what it accomplishes or what it lacks? And then do we have to take into account what its intentions are? And, you know, I think 9 out of 10 is really fair. I mean, the game is not without flaws, but I think what it sets out to do, it does really quite well. And it's, I don't know if this is still the case, but it was really popular to really hate on this game for a long time. Have you experienced any of that?
I've heard some things, and don't get me wrong, I'm not happy with how a lot of fans actually did kind of gatekeep and become toxic, but by that measure, I also don't like hypocrites, and don't think that they classify as Christians either. But for what the game is, and for what he created it to be, it's gold to me.
Yeah. The fan base of this game is, shall we say, a passionate one. I think that's a pretty diplomatic way to put it. And I'm not going to lie. I think this fan base is similar to me to like Rick and Morty or Doctor Who, wherein the works themselves are good, but the fan base can be insufferable. I pretty quickly unsubscribed from the Undertale subreddit because, like, I was just really tired of seeing all these weird tsundere drawings of Sans being like an uwu boy and unnecessary blushing papyrus kissing. It's too much for me. Fandoms are weird, man.
Yeah, it went a little bit off the rails, and that's not to say I judge anybody for that. If that's, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, but for me personally, I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Let me think. I understand what people are going for, but at the same time, it's not theirs to protect. You know what I mean? Like it was very much written and created in a way that I think balances soft and hard world building brilliantly. So I don't know if it really needs all of these other incarnations and iterations.
Yeah, I mean, you run into that kind of stuff with fan art all the time and fandoms and what's that infamous fanfic, My Immortal or something?
I think so.
There's cringe of all sorts all across the internet.
Yeah. No, but as you said earlier, it really does set out to do exactly what it's trying to do. And that to me is a clear victory. And actually, before we recorded, just a little bit before I was talking with Victoria, and she reminded me that I've actually never had anything negative to say about this game. And she's right. It's kind of strange to think about, but and that's not to say, again, it's not without fault, because I can empathize and I can recognize, but, you know, it's a good game, and that's just it. You're allowed to be a fan of this game and not participate in some of the toxicity of the fandom, just like there are, you know.
Oh, for sure. It's like with anything. I mean, two of our favorite competitive games are Rocket League and Smash, and I don't think either one of us would disagree with the statement that those fandoms are particularly toxic. And, you know, that doesn't reflect necessarily on the game. So and I wouldn't call the Undertale fandom toxic. I mean, there's a bit of gatekeeping here and there. What threw me off more so was like the copious amounts of really bizarre fan fiction and fan drawings of characters feeling emotions that are a little naughty. And
yeah,
I don't really want to be a part of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, there's and you know what? If that's good for them, that's fine, but don't shove it down the throats of people who aren't eating it. There are some people who are allergic to lavender. Keep it away from them. It's okay.
Yeah, I think my lavender is just all fanfics in general, but hey, that's just me. I'm just a cranky old guy. Ben, you mentioned this game. Nice segue.
So
nice
old,
segue
so
me.
cranky.
Ben, you mentioned that this game does what it sets out to do ultimately, and I agree with you. So what would you say this game sets out to do? It was ultimately billed as the RPG where you don't have to fight anyone, right?
That's exactly what Toby Fox had set out to do, and he gave us this literal endless rainbow of scenarios with how you interact with people. And I know we're not quite into gameplay yet, but Toby Fox really let this be a have it your way. Grinding isn't necessarily needed in this game. I mean, I don't want to say it's fail-proof because that's not the word, but it's full of humor. He took so long to develop the game, and it's not trying to be anything more than what it is because he blazed a trail that didn't exist before, standing on the giants and clearly inspired by a number of other games and creators. 110%, but he made a game that breaks the fourth wall. It breaks the mold. It changes everything. And then the fact that he doesn't limit himself in the creation of his music. I mean, sure, it's like an 8-bit-ish style game, but he definitely goes way outside of the parameters. He composes beautifully to that end.
Yeah, you had mentioned that there's no grinding in this game. So the two big things that Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, left out were grinding and fetch quests, which are, staples in RPGs. And to that, I say, God bless him, because I'm right there with you. Like, grinding is not always fun. I can tolerate it, but it's not always the most fun thing to do. And fetch quests are just duty. I'm so tired of fetch quests. And good for him for leaving them out.
I thought of you immediately whenever I was playing the game, and I went, there are no fetch quests. Rick's really going to be happy with this, and we're definitely going to talk about it. Toby Fox has said that he does not like fetch quests. So there are 0. Grinding not being necessary. It's all very creative and original and kind of nice. He wanted the game to be easy and enjoyable.
So I had mentioned in my review that he is somebody that was inspired by and pays homage to various RPGs. I think the most notable in Undertale is obviously Earthbound, or Mother 2, depending on how you call that one. That's the most obvious influence, and indeed he was a particularly present modder in the ROM community of Earthbound. He said that he's also been influenced by things like Super Mario RPG, Final Fantasy. You see a lot of influence there. I mean, there's even a particular callback to the opera scene in Final Fantasy VI. And then the other big notable one is the Shin Megami Tensei series, which, Ben, I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, are you?
I was not until I was reading about it and learning about the inspiration it played.
Yeah, Shin Megami Tensei is the series that actually spawned Persona, and their big thing in those games is you can talk to the monsters and kind of attempt to befriend them or bargain with them and things like that. And that's a core mechanic in Undertale, because if you choose not to fight a monster, you can either try to run, which, doesn't always work, or you could get them friendly enough to agree to stop fighting. And to do that, you have to go through a series of word puzzles where you figure out which word or actions are the right ones to do to get the monsters to be like, hey, you're cool, homie. Let's, handshake. We're all good.
Absolutely. Shall we pivot to gameplay to that end, Richard?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this game plays?
So generally, it's a top-down RPG of sorts where you play as whatever you name your character to be honest, but you can't name your character somebody within the game or it will start to get sassy with you.
Well, you can. So you know that one of the enemies that I like a lot is the flexing seahorse named Aaron.
Yes.
So if your name is actually Aaron and you name yourself Aaron, the message you get is like something like, "Oh, nice name," with a winky emoji or winking emoticon. But yeah, you're right. You can't name yourself Sans. You can name yourself Papyrah.
Right.
That's fine. Or yeah, but you're exactly right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
It's all good. But so that's how we traverse through the world that we are set in. Whenever we are interacting with monsters, I don't want to call them enemies because that's not what they are in this game, which is part of the brilliant psychology of it. We end up generally in an evasion-based combat system. So, Rick, as you were saying, we can either fight them, we can act and like talk to them. Whenever we're in combat, that is, we have fight, act, item, or mercy, which is either flee or spare, and we can only get to spare whenever we have talked to them the right way. Whenever I don't want to say talk them down, but like whenever we get them to a point where they are comfortable, feel safe, sometimes they're just scared and run, or sometimes they flex themselves out of the room, which I found particularly fun.
Yeah, we can maybe, I don't know, do you have any monsters or enemies that stood out? Well, no, they're not enemies, you're right. Do you have any monsters that stood out to you in terms of like enjoying their dialogue or things like that?
Washawa is one of my personal favorites, because there's one moment in the battle where, you know, there's often a lot of dialogue that happens whenever the monster gets done with their turn and you have just finished evading, in the bullet hell scenario, it will give a commentary as to what the monster is doing. And so when you're fighting Washawa, it says, "Washawa is rinsing off a pizza." And I don't know why. That literally just always makes me laugh. Also, Aaron is sweating bullets, literally. What are your favorites?
That's a good one. Aaron always cracks me up. I liked the first one that made me actually laugh out loud was Sundare Plane. Just like it's just such a stupid pun that I like never would have thought of. And then, you know, of course, that whole thing is like an anime trope too. Temmie, obviously, which we can maybe talk about Temmie when we get to Temmie Village.
Oh, we absolutely should. But while we're traversing in RPG mode, I should say that the game is very Legend of Zelda in that the game makes you live in your character. And that's something I always appreciate is that you, whoever you are, whatever your name is, we can use the name Frisk if we want, but for the time being, your character doesn't really say anything. It's implied what your character says, but you never actually say anything.
Yeah, so that's actually a really important point, that you can both name your character and the character is a silent protagonist in the way that it's supposed to represent you. That becomes really important towards the end of the true pacifist route. But like you alluded, the character's name is Frisk, but we'll get to that when we get to it. You also mentioned, Ben, bullet hell. So the way that this game plays in battle is it is turn-based. So you get to go, then your enemy gets to go, and so on and so forth. And between attacking and trying to spare, whichever you decide to do, your enemy will attack you in like a bullet hell fashion. So it's going to be raining down different kinds of projectiles or patterns or things like that within the designated box in which your little heart lives. You can move in any direction. It's omnidirectional as the heart. Well, it's 2D, but otherwise it's omnidirectional as the heart, and you just gotta try to dodge them all. So yeah, bullet hell. And honestly too, it's a great introduction to bullet hell for folks that have never played like a quote unquote real one, like Enter the Gungeon. Not that this isn't a real one, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean, and that's another thing worthy of pointing out in this game, in the gameplay, is that there are 3 ways that you can play this game, which we will get into later, but I will tell you now. There is the neutral run, where whenever you encounter monsters, you can, your first run, I believe, no matter what, is neutral. But in the neutral run, you can harm some of the monsters, or you can spare all of them, or whatever. But the next run generally should be the pacifist run, in which you harm literally nobody under any circumstances, basically. And then the third run is the genocide run. Again, we'll get to all of that, but that's important in how the game plays. And I should also point out that the game is self-aware to the point that if you restart, the game lets you know that it knows, especially if you've hurt someone significant in the story.
Yes, and that also becomes important whenever you restart the game to do different routes. The game will give you little Easter eggs or little quips like, oh, I think I've seen you before, or you seem like an old friend, or sometimes people will outright say that they know who you are and that you're traversing quote-unquote save files. There are 2 characters that will do things like that. And they do that through like the cloud save system. So on Steam, if you wanted to truly reset your game, you would have to not only uninstall it, but erase your Steam cloud data of it. It's not the first game to do these things. It's not the first game to make an RPG where you can spare people. It's not the first game to use metadata to break the fourth wall and kind of play the game in a self-aware way. But I don't think it's fair to criticize the game for not being the first to do that, because I think its implementations of it are pretty good. Like this, speaking personally, this was the first game that I ever played that had a really self-aware break the fourth wall kind of thing, aside from like a couple quips and like, I don't know, Gex or something. But
I was going to say Gex.
Yeah. This is like recording a podcast at Chuck Bryant's house.
This is like I was going to say, never mind. I'm out. I was going to say something about Kevin Spacey. I'm out.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Not Kevin Spacey.
I think he mentions him in the game, too. That's the worst part, but I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Do we want to camp out on Kevin Spacey? Or are we going to do... No, we're not going to.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah, let's not do that. God, that really derailed me. Kevin Spacey.
I know. Well, because I think he's like, yeah, this is like playing checkers at Kevin Spacey's house. I mean, he was doing the Peter Griffin thing. It's like Peter Griffin before Peter Griffin. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God. How that has aged poorly. Yeesh.
No, but you were talking about breaking the fourth wall and how it was the first game that did that for you.
Yeah, and, you know, it was my introduction to that kind of thing. I think it's not the only game that I've played since that's done that, but I think it does it pretty well. Like, the infamous scene, the judgment scene is handled really well. There's literally no foreshadowing to it or, like, any kind of spoilers that you can get without looking up the spoilers. And, you know, all of the, like, save load data that is presented from Sans and Flowey eventually, it's presented in a way that's, I think, believable and meaningful. And, yeah, there are faults with the game, but I don't think they're there. And I think it's myopic to criticize them on that because, you know, this isn't the first game that's ever done something like that, like I've seen said online or anything, you know, or it doesn't match whatever person is reviewing its ideals of what that should be.
Yeah, and that's just it. While he's standing on the shoulders of giants of who came before him, he has clearly outlined in interviews who's inspired him and what games have inspired him. And I admire him for saying that because that's, I mean, as you and I talk about in composition, sometimes it's, not sometimes, all of the time, we are inspired by what we hear whenever we're writing something, whenever we're transcribing something, when we're arranging something. It's exactly what it is, but Toby Fox's own unique twists in what he does with music, with leitmotif, and with some of the humor and some of the, I mean, he just takes things to levels that, you know, as you said, it subverts expectations at a lot of points, and that's one thing I love about this game in particular. One thing I want to say really quickly about the gameplay, and then if you want to move into development, I would be glad to do so with you. Just look at your face. I just love you. Anyhow, once upon a time, I will say that I eliminated a character, and I was not happy about it, or rather, I watched somebody do this, and then there was a restart, and Flowey called me or the person, again, I forget because I've watched playthroughs and I've played this so many times, where Flowey turned their face into the person and said, I know what you've done. Who?
Yeah, Yeah, and when you're encountering that for the first time, like now it's so in the zeitgeist that you expect it. But when you encounter that for the first time, it's really impactful because it's like, oh, it's this kind of game. Or the first time the game goes into like full ending of Earthbound mode and completely changes the art direction or like crashes the game, you're like, oh, it's this kind of game. And that's really it's really powerful and it's really good. I do love when games do that. I think it's a fine line for it to be like kind of kitschy and mishandled. I don't know that kitschy is the right word, but I think you know what I mean. Just mishandled in a way that's like clumsy or a little too over the top, so to speak. But I don't think Toby Fox did that. I think this walks that line really well.
When it's done right, you don't recognize that it's happening until after the fact.
What do you mean? Whenever
it's done, this whole like, oh, it's one of those kind of games. When it's done right, you kind of like get hit upside the head with it, and then you come to and say, oh, wow, that's really creative. That's a cool move. Versus like, if it does that, you go, oh, what a twist. You know what I mean? Like, saw this kind of coming. And this game doesn't exactly do that.
Yeah. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head that fail to do this in a meaningful way. I know for sure that there are. It's just, the old dementia's catching up to me. I shouldn't joke about that, but I am getting old, so there is that. But, the two games that I think of that do meta games quite well are You and Me and Her, which is a visual novel, and then the subsequent visual novel that was inspired by it, Doki Doki Literature Club.
No way.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I didn't know. I was just saying I didn't know that Doki Doki Literature Club had another game attached to it.
Well, it doesn't. It was inspired by it. You and Me and Her came out, I want to say like 10 years prior, and it's kind of the same thing. Like it has the same sort of meta twist at the end. But those are two games that I think also do it quite well because it involves like the game actually messing with save data and altering your files and things like that. Yeah, so although I can't think right now of games that mishandle it, we all have played games that do, right?
Absolutely. I mean, anything can be mishandled in the video game world, but I guess I really wasn't expecting it with this game, which is, I think, what makes it so eloquent.
And I think what ties into it being handled well is that the relationships with the characters and the monsters are actually handled in a meaningful way. So the characters and even the monsters will interact with you differently based on your previous choices. You get to spend a lot more time with them. There are several instances. So you kind of have like 3 tiers of characters in this game. You've got common monsters, you've got like mini boss monsters, and then you've got the full-on main character boss monsters. And you interact with all of them outside of the game, like in the field, as actual living members of the community, which I think is what makes this game, 1, have a lot of heart and character, and 2, which is why I think the whole meta thing is handled well towards the end, is because we're actually made to care about this environment and the various villages. And it, you could argue that it doesn't work as well as some other games, and I think that is a more than fair thing to say. But to say that it fails at getting you to care about the characters and the settings and their internal lives, I would take issue with that.
I would too, because there were a lot of moments where it forced me into an empathic situation that I wasn't ready for. And yeah, I found myself caring for them, but that's any good storytelling, right? Is characters we care about.
The first time that happened to me, it was either my very first playthrough or like second playthrough, I'm not sure. There are a variety of like dog characters that are mini boss style characters that can exist in the community outside of the battles. And my first playthrough was just true neutral. I was just, I'll kill some, I won't kill some others. Oh, this is a mini boss. I could use the EXP, and we'll talk about that twist later. But I killed one of the dog people, and then I went to the like tavern, and one of the dogs was playing poker, and he kept asking when I talked to him, like, where's that other guy? I can't play against these other two by myself. I'll lose. And I was like, oh, I know where he is.
Oops.
I know where he is, and it's not here.
Yeah, no, and it does a great job of that. Shall we move to some development, Richard?
Yeah. So you were saying this a little bit off mic, and I'm going to steal it from you. if that's all right.
I'm not happy about it.
This game was developed and funded through a Kickstarter campaign. It only lasted just over a month, and by just, well, no, it was just a month, with a goal of $5,000 that surpassed it tenfold. It eventually ended up raising just north of like $51,000. And, you know, we've seen games in the past like Mighty Number 9 do things like that and just fail miserably. And I think Toby Fox did the exact opposite. He raised way more money and it turned into a great thing.
And he put so much care into this game. I mean, it was developed over 32 months, and the number of people who contributed to Kickstarter was 2,398. That's how many individual people helped raise 10 times and then some of the goal of Toby Fox, which I find inspiring. It also says the kind of faith people have in him and the kind of work they were expecting of him. And I didn't know any of this was happening until after I played the game, and I went, well, no wonder. It's fantastic. Toby Fox's biggest goal was to have the gameplay and the story interwoven in such a way that they can't be separate. With the art of the game, he relied heavily on who Rick mentioned earlier, someone named Temmie, who is a character and is also an artist on the game. Her name is Temmie Chang. And he found that and this is a quote by Toby Fox, that there's a psychological thread that says audiences become more attached to characters drawn simply rather than in detail, and saying that they benefit from the use of visual gags within the art. I thought that was really wild.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't ruminated on that, and I would like to see where or how he came up with that. But suffice to say, I think the artwork is great, and I think it's very endearing, especially in certain characters like Temmie is a good one, and of course, as you know, all the fanfic depicts, Sans and Papyrus. That's obviously they look great. And yeah, if we haven't made it clear, this game is almost the work of an auteur, that being Toby Fox. His friend Temmie was the other main consultant on the game, but outside of that, and outside of like the few that you might see in the credits, I don't think anybody else really worked on this game in any kind of meaningful way.
No, I mean, he took the lion's share. He juggernauted the whole thing, and just basically, and I mean, he's the kind of guy, he's extremely modest, and there are a lot of people mentioned in the credits who I'm sure helped get it onto other consoles, other than PC. But yeah, Toby Fox, he labored over this game, and actually he said he feels a lot of pressure from creating this game, and was saying that he feels afraid that he might not create anything better than this. He said, but you know what, if this is the best thing I've ever created, he said, that's also okay. That's also fine with me. And I thought that was kind of beautiful. And also, how about your magnum opus being Opus 1? You know what I mean?
Yeah. We don't see that very often. But you know, when we do see that, those first magnum opuses are often not just career defining, but really affected inside of the zeitgeist and really change things for the better. So yeah, I mean, he could do a lot worse than having Undertale represent his creative career.
Honest to goodness. So as we mentioned earlier, dislike of fetch quests. We don't have many. Grinding, not really necessary. It should also be stated in development that he hated characters like Fi or Fi, however the heck you say their name, from Skyward Sword, and how they help with too many puzzles too early on. And so one of his characters, to kind of throw it to Temmie a little bit, is a character named Toriel, who I know we will get to as we talk about the story. But she is meant to be a parody of the tutorial characters. And Toby, interestingly enough, said that mothers in video games often come off more as symbols than as actual mothers, like the mom in Pokemon. And so he wanted her to actually feel like it. And the fact that he's got this great artwork and he has this wonderful writing, I mean, I love it. I don't know what your thoughts are on, you know, this aspect of the game. Like, you can tell what he likes and doesn't like very clearly.
I called Toriel mom, and then I flirted with her after I called her mom.
I think 99% of us would say we did that.
Oh, and she says, this is concerning. Please stop. Yeah, no, I definitely, I didn't put together the pun in the name Toriel, such as tutorial. Super simple after I read it. But yeah, I caught that on my playthroughs. When I think of annoying tutorial style characters, I always think of Navi from Ocarina. That might be one of my least favorite things in that game. I really detest Navi.
Yeah, it's fair.
And it's a bummer. I think, we've talked a lot about tutorials on this game podcast, and how they're often mishandled, not done super well, or just breaking the immersion. And, having a character like Toriel, I think it sidesteps that. He creates a sort of tutorial that is believable. It's diegetic. It's everything that I could have wanted from a tutorial, including making fun of other tutorials.
That was particularly funny to me. And also, even whenever at the beginning of the game there's a bowl of candy, which we will get to, but whenever you take a piece of candy, as, a child underground would do, it says, you picked up the candy. And it just says, press X to access inventory. It doesn't make it anything more than it needs to be. It doesn't make it some sort of weird, like, you have this, like, it's just, no. It's like, yeah, just press it. It keeps it simple, and it doesn't try to be anything more than it is.
So one more thing with this game that we should touch on for sure is the music. So the music was composed entirely, I believe, by Toby Fox himself, who is a self-taught musician. And knowing that he is I thought that he had gone to school for music for some reason. That makes this all the more impressive because the compositions are, incredibly good.
100%. Victoria and I were reflecting on the waterfall theme and about the fact that it's in 4/4 and then there's 3/4 at the same time. It's literally 3 against 4. And the fact that he wrote this without any formal training is just kind of baffling to me. He composed everything, I believe, in FL Studios. And something I thought was interesting was the fact that Fox actually composed the music before the programming, as it, quote, helped decide how the scene should go, end quote.
And I think that makes sense. I've heard of a lot of creative types doing that, like creating, whether it's a character design or the story or the music before they shape the rest of it. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially thinking of some of the music like Megalovania, for example, which I don't think was composed specifically for Undertale, but it serves as a fine enough example. That music depicts a very specific kind of character, and I don't mean character as in Sans, I mean character as in the sort of general vibe or feel or mood of a certain area or what have you. So I it's believable to me. It's believable, and I think it worked out really well for him. Do you have a favorite music track in this game? I wanted to ask you that because I don't know that I could pick.
I literally have the next thing in my notes as, Rick, what are your favorite musical themes? So I'll show you mine. No, I have a hard time with.
There's that naughty fanfic coming back into the play.
I told you about 40 minutes in I was going to do this, everyone, and thank you for all of your contributions. I am going to start by taking off my socks. No, I'm just kidding. No, before I say that, I want to say yes. I recognize that some people do write the music before the scene. How the heck did he do this? How did he come up with this many original themes? Like, unreal. My favorite themes, well, one that I hate this. This is so hard because I don't know what my favorite theme is. After you, après-vous, please.
I think it's safe to say that we like most, if not all, of the music, even if we're just shouting out specific ones, right? I think for me, the music that plays when you're facing off with Tuffet, is that her name?
Muffet.
I'm not looking at my notes. Her music's really good. I really like that. The memory theme if you end up putting the umbrella above the reigning statue. That's really pleasant. Even just the main home theme, not home on the home screen, but home, like Toriel's home. Yeah.
The guitar, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually kind of prefer it on the music box setting after you wake up. I think it works really well. There's just enough chromaticism in the melody to make it interesting. And then, of course, we can't not shout out Bone Trussell or Megalovania or all the hits that this has become known for.
I mean, it again, when I say it like blazed its own trail, this is exactly what I'm talking about. For me, musically, I think it's interesting that you say Muppets theme, because I like Muppets theme, but I like Muppets theme's earlier incarnation, which is Dummy Fight. Because it is, in fact, the same piece of music for the most part, just in a different, slightly different rhythmic sort of structure. Dummy Fight's my favorite because it kind of sounds, it kind of sounds like a crazed swing dance something or other with a little bit of like ragtime flair, and it's in a minor mode. Dummy Fight. Dummy Fight is wonderful. I also like the waterfall theme because of those fighting meters. I like hearing the fact that the that kind of celestial sound is in 4/4 time, but then the piano part plays in a very just somber sort of way. You've already mentioned Papyrus's theme, which I just who can't like that,
Yeah, and it should be mentioned, too, that the Dummy Fight theme is really just Napstablook's theme, just sped up a little bit, too.
It is. It absolutely is. And there's a little bit more sauce thrown into it, and there's like a bridge in it that's a lot of fun. So that's just it. Napstablook, Dummy Fight, and Muppets theme are all more or less the same, which I thought was curious. I love the home theme, too. That's the problem with this game is you're talking about we all like all of the music in it, and that's just it. There's nothing in this game that I listen to and go, this is inherently bad. This is poorly written. It's all very well done, well used.
Yeah. There's not really any track that I could think of right now that I actively dislike.
I remembered one that I love.
Oh, which one?
It's the Metaton theme, and I hate loving it as much as I do, but I love it so much.
Is it the sexy theme that happens once he turns into Metaton EX?
Yes, I actually love that. I don't want to like it as much as I do, but I love it.
It's really good.
Well, and also the fact that it, quote, smells like Metaton and all that stuff. Like, it just, it's just so stupid. I don't want to give anything away too much. Should we move to some release and reception and what even happened with this game when it came out?
Oh, sure. I guess we haven't got there yet.
That's correct.
So this game released on September 15th of 2015. Originally exclusively for PC, that is to say Microsoft Windows and OS X. And then I think later for Linux, but, who uses that?
No one. Sorry, I'm kidding.
The Nintendo Switch version... Oh, sorry, no, I'm jumping ahead too much. The PlayStation version ended up getting released, when was that, in August of 2017. The Nintendo Switch version was revealed during March of 2018. And it ended up releasing later in September of that same year.
Yep, on its anniversary date.
And then the Xbox One version was actually just released this year in March, on March 16th.
Which is shocking to me because of Xbox and Microsoft, but, they're run by ants. So that's... And if you don't know about that, you need to watch Video Game Donkey's video on that. There's his second plug for the day.
Yeah, he really should be paying us at this point.
He really should. No, he's a wonderful YouTuber and we love him. So that's when Undertale came out. There's a game called Deltarune that we won't quite really get into today, but it's another game by Toby Fox, and it's kind of in the family of games, as Deltarune is an anagram of Undertale. It came out in October of 2018. Just something that's worth mentioning. This game across the boards was just met with extreme critical acclaim, and it became a cult video game like almost instantly. It just kind of it took off, and it was nominated for but did not win Best Indie Game at the Global Game Awards in 2015. Yeah, he sold a lot more than he ever thought he was going to. I think by the end of 2015, he had sold 530,000 copies, which, could you imagine, like, you know, I kind of think about Five Nights at Freddy's. You know what I mean? Like, Scott Cawthon's working at a dollar store, and then one day is like, I'm going to make a game. And, like, talk about crazy fandom. But that's just it. Toby Fox just kind of he didn't realize that he was lining up this much gunpowder towards success, and just, you know, boom goes the dynamite. I think there's over 3.5 million players on Steam. Yeah, by the end of July of 2018, over 3.5 million people playing on Steam, for goodness sake.
Yeah, you know, earlier today I purposely looked up like negative reviews of this game, which is something that I do. Like, when I love something, I will go out of my way to look up negative reviews of it, just so I can read opposing viewpoints and then ponder, like, do I agree with this? Are they valid? Do I not agree with this, or whatever? Most of the negative ones that I found were really myopic in their lens. They were like, the puzzles are super easy and the game is super sappy. And it's like, fair. I do think the puzzles are not very difficult, but that is so far from the point of the game. That's like fixating on something so minute that you're missing the entire picture. You're standing too close to the pointillism painting. You need to take a step back rather than critiquing the specific, well, not pixel, but specific point of the pointillism painting. You need to look at the picture of a whole, you know? And it's like, I'm again, this game is not without its, you know, flaws. I mean, if we had to, we could talk about its flaws, but I think it's really silly to say, well, I didn't like this one thing and I didn't like this other thing, so this game is like a 4 out of 10. It sucks. It's like, you gotta be more critical than that, bud. You can't. You're not a good critic just because you dislike something. Those two are not hand in hand.
No, they're not. And to be honest, Rick, and this is something that drives me nuts, is that some people literally make it their jobs just to find things that are wrong with anything. And that's all well and good. Like, if that's what you're looking for, is to find something negative, that's fine. But, like, if it's a splinter, it doesn't need to be treated like a cannonball through the chest. You know what I'm saying? Like, the game is not explicitly a puzzle game. The puzzles are not meant to, you know, drive any narrative. Not like in, you know, some Legend of Zelda games, like, where it really is that. So yeah, those puzzles they better be impressive. But, like, in this particular game, come on. And that's not to say that you shouldn't look for criticism, but, like, at the same time, be careful of how you criticize, because you could be missing the whole thing. The pixel analogy is really spot on.
Yeah. I mean, the puzzles certainly aren't anything standoutish to me. And, you know, there's a specific, like, 2014 Tumblr style humor that kind of permeates this whole thing. And I'm not going to lie, that's not really my bag, but it never got so grating that I would think to levy that as a con. You know what I mean? It's just, I recognize it's not for me, but it's not inherently bad.
Exactly. I mean, as we said at the very beginning, this game is setting out to do exactly what it's trying to do.
And something that we set out to do is talk about the story, which we're almost approaching an hour. Do you want to jump into the story? Did we miss anything?
I think we're pretty well good to go. I mean, we talked fandom, we talked some accolades. I mean, basically, it scored over 90 for a number of different... You know, Metacritic has it rated at 92, 92, and 93 on the respective systems. Some people gave it 10 out of 10s, others 9.5, 9. Just well done. Good music. Toby, we love you. Keep it up. We believe in you always. Story time.
Yeah, so you start off the game, you name your character, you can name it mostly whatever you'd like, and you start out as a young human who has fallen into the underground. The game doesn't give you really any kind of a prequel outside of like a short video prior to playing the game. Did you want to talk about that short video at all?
Yeah, it kind of, that little video that we have, it really just touches on the backstory of the monsters and the humans and their relationship. I mean, I don't know how to go at it at length, but it just kind of talks about how there's this Mount Ebbet, which is what people climb up to and they never return from. They show the picture of this anyway. Yeah.
Yep, and it sets up the premise that monsters were sealed underground by humans after a war between the two. Everything gets illuminated more as we go through the story. So let's do. So
Absolutely.
As you wake up, you're walking around and you're introduced to your first character, Flowey the Flower. And he is a very cute, very happy looking little flower. And he's introducing you to the world. This takes you to the... Does it take you to the battle screen?
Pretty much immediately. It's also worth mentioning that you begin on a bed of flowers, which is really curious that that's where you wake up, and then you walk down a hallway, and there's Flowey the Flower.
Yeah, and he introduces you to friendliness pellets. He says that they're filled with love or something or the other, and he says, here, try to catch a friendliness pellet. And you do catch it, and it hurts you, and he instantly shifts the tone and his facial features, and he calls you an idiot, saying it's kill or be killed in this world. You can also dodge the friendliness pellets, much to his annoyance, and every time you do, he gets a little more irate, and the music gets a little more frantic and somewhat distorted, but ultimately, it's still kill or be killed. He circles you with friendliness pellets and laughs maniacally as he tries to kill you.
That's correct, and right as the pellets are circling in and closing in on you, a flame emerges on the side of the screen, and it comes and it wipes Flowey away, and that's where we meet Toriel, who is basically your mom tutorial human, and she says, what a terrible creature, torturing such a poor, innocent youth. Do not be afraid, my child. I am Toriel, caretaker of the ruins. And she comes to see if anyone's fallen down, and she says that you're the first one in a long time, and she says that she'll guide you through the catacombs, which is precisely what she does to a point.
Yeah, she generally shows you the ropes of how the ruins work. There will be mild puzzles, which she generally walks you through. Either that or the puzzles are just walk to the end of the room. She also introduces you to the mechanic of not fighting enemies. This happens with a dummy, and she says if you get into a fight with an enemy, try to have a conversation, which you can do with the dummy, and it says he's not much for conversation, and it ends.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem much for conversation. Literally, I was watching this even earlier today. Like, I played through it. I think I beat Pacifist yesterday. Yeah, and I laugh every time it comes up with it doesn't seem much for conversation. So you don't fight, you talk to the dummy, like Toriel said, and she's very pleased with you. And she's about to take you in and say, there's another puzzle in this room. I wonder if you can solve it. It's a spike path. Actually, you encounter a frogget first. A frogget is a monster. We're not going to name every single solitary monster in this game unless we want to, or else we'd be here for like 3 or 4 hours. But, you've got Frogget, and Toriel comes over and scares off Frogget, and then you're about to try this puzzle, and she decides to not let you do the puzzle and walks you over these spikes herself. Even though the puzzle shows how to do it in the room over. She's like, no, and then she holds your hand, and she walks you through, and then she gets to her difficult request that she has to ask of you. Which is that, Richard?
Her difficult request, is that where she asks you to walk to the end of the room and then she says, I'm sorry about this?
Very dramatic music plays as you walk literally from one end of a hallway to another with literally no threats in the room, but the music is really intense.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. You do encounter a couple of puzzles here. There's a rock puzzle where you have to push rocks onto switches. There are 3 of them. The third rock, when you go to push it, talks to you, and it's like, "Whoa, partner, what are you trying to do? Push me around," and stuff like that. And you ask it a couple times to move, and it only moves like a couple of inches. And you eventually get through that. But it that one always takes me off guard because I can't hear that rock speaking in any kind of voice outside of like really drunk country dude.
Yeah. I kind of hear a little bit more of a New Yorker whenever he calls you pumpkin.
Anything for you, pumpkin.
Oh, it's so good.
Whoa there, partner. I'm Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Hey, that sounds like somebody else I know.
I'm Rock the Dwayne Johnson.
That's right. That's right. But that's just it, is that the game does tell you on a sign that 3 out of 4 rocks enjoy being moved. And this one doesn't. And it's very funny.
I think my favorite sign that you encounter is one of the first ones where it's a sign, and if you press, whatever, I think A to read it, it'll say press A to read signs. And like that kind of dry humor just cracks me up. There's not a lot of that kind of really dryness in the game, but I appreciate that one every time.
Oh, it's great. And that's just it. He pokes a lot of fun at tutorials throughout the beginning of this game, which I know that you enjoy that, Rick. I know I do. Right around this time, or rather right before it, is whenever Toriel gives you her number, and that's whenever we can call, say hello, ask about her, flirt, call her mother, in whatever order you want to go in. It can get kind of strange. But anyhow, you can call her. She'll call you and ask you about your favorite kind of pie. What did you say was your favorite kind of pie, Rick?
I think I said cinnamon.
I said cinnamon too, and then she called me, as I knew she called you, and was like, you don't not like butterscotch. Okay, right. And so at one point, well, we'll get to it. But anyhow, you do eventually make it to her house, and she's worried about you because she told you to not leave the room she left you in. But she takes you into the house because she has a surprise for you, and she shows you your new room. Now, did you go to sleep immediately whenever you went into your new room, Rick?
No, I looked around. You can see some old dusty toys. You see a drawing of a golden flower, things of that nature. You can also explore the house if you want to as well. You can get into Toriel's room, I believe you can. Just typical stuff. You can look in her panty drawer, but it's actually not panties, it's socks, and it says, "It's socks, how scandalous," or something along the lines of that, which is good. Yeah, and then you get your pie, and then you can go to sleep. One thing that we glossed over was on the way to the house, you meet your first sort of mid-tier character, Naps the Blook. He's a ghost.
Yes.
He's a ghost that's like laying down in the middle of the intersection.
Saying Z.
Yeah, the text is just Z, so you assume he's sleeping, but then you get a parenthetical saying the ghost is just saying Z out loud in an effort to make you think he's sleeping. Naps the Blook is like kind of a depressed ghost that just has periods after everything, like mile-long ellipses after everything that he says.
Oh, no.
Yes, and that's the first thing. I've never actually... I don't remember what you do on the genocide route if you try to fight him, but you can talk your way out of them. And he's like, "Oh, I always come here to get away from people. Now I found someone that was nice to me. Oh," and then he just leaves.
Yep. And this is after he cries a top hat on himself, and he says, "Do you like it? It's called Dapper Blook." It's just absurd. But you can make him feel really good. At one point in the battle box where you're usually evading, the text comes up and it says, "Really not up for it right now, sorry." And the text is shaking as it's on the screen. Yeah, I just love it. It's worth mentioning, back to the house, that in Toriel's room is a book full of jokes that we learn she has exchanged with someone. We'll get to that. You do sleep in bed. And there's a piece of pie waiting for you on the ground, which, Rick, you were talking about the home theme. And whenever you go to sleep, whenever it's nighttime, the theme changes to a music box sound. and you wake up to butterscotch cinnamon pie on the ground, and you pick it up and you put it in your inventory. What's funny is that whenever you look at it as an item in a battle, it comes up as butts pie.
Yeah, it always comes up as butts pie. I like that a lot. Yeah, so after you wake up, you can talk to Torio and ask her about leaving. You can ask her a couple times. She just kind of diverts the subject before running off. If you follow her, she'll say that she's seen this time and time again. Humans come down and they end up dying by somebody named Asgore, which we'll learn about him a little later. So she's going to seal the entrance out of the ruins. And she says, if you get in my way, I'm going to fight you. And that's exactly what happens. You can't actually lose this fight, but you can accidentally kill her. That's important to note. You can accidentally kill her. But the way to not do that is to just try to spare her constantly. Once you get low enough on HP, her attacks will purposely miss you. Even if you try to get hit by them, you cannot actually get hit and die by her attacks. But yeah, so eventually you spare her enough and she'll relent. She hugs you and she says, I understand why you want to leave, but please don't return if you do. I hope you understand why. And outside, assuming this is your first playthrough, is Flowey. He kind of berates you for playing by your own rules. His quote is, so you saved one life. Then he lists some of the monsters that you may have killed in there. Think about them. Do you think those monsters had families? Do you think any of them have friends? Selfish brat. And then he leaves. Which, by the way, I don't think we mentioned this, but the story that we're detailing right now is a neutral route playthrough. So yes. Neutral route being you can spare some, you can kill some, it's up to you. Towards the end, we'll kind of shift after we finish to the true ending, which is a pacifist ending. And then we'll note any kind of stuff with the genocide run as well.
Mm-hmm. So she says exactly what Rick just said. Never return. And that's where we, after that we've got Flowey, and then we're going through a door that leads us to the rest of the underground. This region is covered in snow. You can look at this bush that's literally right to the left of the door. And it says, what? There's a camera in there. And that's all that's in the bush. It's kind of peculiar. So you keep going, you're going along this path, and it gets very ominous, and twigs are breaking behind you, right as a tree at a very, very well-timed tree passes over an image, and then the twig's broken, and then you see a shadow behind you, and this is all top down. So he did a great job with this scene, building up the suspense here. And that's whenever you hear this voice behind you saying human, and it's asking you to turn around and greet a pal. And it's this complete shadow figure who puts out its hand towards you, and you reach up and you go to handshake it, and a fart noise sounds as we see the character Sans for the first time. Sans the skeleton. And his font is entirely in Comic Sans, which is appropriate because he is wisecracking with dad jokes galore. He tells you his brother's been trying to capture a human and that he's coming soon. So he tells you to quick cross this bridge. And that's where you first encounter Papyrus. Papyrus is Sans' brother, and he is in the font of Papyrus.
Yes, always in all caps, too. As Papyrus is coming, Sans says, here, hide behind this conveniently shaped lamp, which is just always a reskinned sprite of your character as a lamp. And Papyrus is going on about how Sans hasn't recalibrated his puzzles, how they need to be on watch for a human, and the entire time Sans keeps saying, maybe you should check behind this lamp. That might help you. And Papyrus isn't having any of it. Papyrus is a lovable goofball, perpetually optimistic, just too stupid for his own good and too stupid to ever not be happy. One of those kinds of characters.
So endearing, though.
Yeah. Sans will ask you to kind of humor his brother as you go on, because Sans really looks up to Papyrus, but he recognizes that, he's probably never going to catch a human. You run into them more as you're progressing through this area. They present you with a series of ridiculous puzzles. The first one is a hidden electricity maze, which Papyrus inadvertently walks the path through the snow so that you could get out of it. There's a jumble word puzzle, junior jumble word puzzle, which you can either look at or just straight up ignore.
Is it Junior Jumble? No, it's the other one, isn't it?
No, it's the one where it's like it gives you a list of words, and in the jumble of letters, you have to find the words.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's not a word search. I'm saying I thought it was the other one because I thought Papyrus was criticizing the one that Sans left and said you should have left him Junior Jumble.
Oh, I don't know. I thought they were arguing about crossword puzzles versus Junior Jumble.
Which one's harder, which is the one that Sans left or the one that Papyrus uses, which is Junior Jumble?
No, this was Junior Jumble because, like, the mascot on it's an ice cube with, like, a dog face or something.
I'm looking it up for my health. Please continue.
One thing that I liked about this one was one of the words that you can find is just a string of random letters that is just the entire top line of the word search. I like that a lot.
Oh, it's fantastic. Oh, yeah, so it's the Monster Kids word search. And Papyrus says you should have left him the Junior Jumble.
Oh, okay. There's also a big circle puzzle, which is just stepping on X's to turn them into circles, which can actually be solved if you just ask Papyrus to do it for you. There is a randomizer, which, well, let's jump over that one for a second. Then the last one is the Bridge Gauntlet of Terror, which has like spears, cannons, spikes, and a dog for some reason, which Papyrus elects not to use. The randomizer, do you want to talk about the randomizer, Ben?
I'm happy to talk about the randomizer. So the randomizer comes just before the Bridge of Doom, and in the randomizer, it's this whole computer system where he flicks the switch and there are all of these squares across this grid. I'm not sure what the actual dimensions are, but different colors mean different things. Red mean you can't walk. Pink means that it's a safe spot. Blue is water. Yellow is electricity. And if there's a blue next to a yellow, you get shocked. But if you step on an orange one, you smell like oranges.
It's just purposefully as convoluted as possible.
And then, of course, he throws the switch and it's like going random. And you're like, oh, shit, I hope I remember how to do all of this.
Yeah, and he's like, this will be so random, not even I will know the answer. And then he asks you, he gives you the choice. He's like, do you understand the rules? And you could select no and hear them all again. But once you move forward, the randomized selection is always just a straight pink path that you can walk across, which is, that's always funny. And that randomizer comes back later in its actual form too.
It's hilarious. But Papyrus, upon seeing this, literally spins away. Like, he just does circles and, like, leaves the room. He doesn't even have anything to say. All the other puzzles, he's like, wow, that's really impressive. Or like, haha, you really must have struggled with this one. But, like, this one, he just leaves. He doesn't say anything. He just leaves.
Yeah. So we're going through here. Our destination is Snowdon Town. Along the way, though, we meet a couple more minor characters, mid-tier characters, I guess you could say. There is, I don't remember the dog's name. I have it written down as No Moving Dog. That dog introduces
Doggo.
you. Oh, it's just Doggo.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a dog that's kind of on guard. He can only see you if you're moving. That introduces the mechanic of staying still if you're faced with an attack that's blue, which you can do. You can pet him. He can't see you, and then he says, "I'm gonna need some dog treats for this," which is a.
And there are smoked dog treats on the ground, and the text comes up, someone's been smoking dog treats.
You find both the lesser dog and greater dog. Lesser dog is just a dog in a suit of armor. You pet it once, and you can instantly spare it, but you can continue petting it, and each time its neck grows longer. So much so that you can keep going, and it'll loop around the screen and go off the screen and come back. I've never tested to see just how far you can go with this.
Of course, being the pain in the ass that I am, I did. And the dog's head will, like, literally just, it goes up, it comes down, and it keeps going until you can't pet the dog anymore, and it's, like, whimpering, and you're like, oh, but you do collect more gold by petting the dog too much.
Oh, interesting. Greater dog is a tiny dog in a gigantic suit of armor. And then you also encounter Doggy and Dogamy, I think are their names. They're two dogs that are in love that kind of wield gigantic axes. This cracks me up because if you kill one of them, the other one just gets really mad and their attacks get stronger. But if you kill that one instead, it's revealed that they're wearing shirts with each other on them. And that dog just gets too depressed to actually fight. So its attacks just kind of sputter to the ground. And yeah, you can't spare it at that point. You just gotta you got to kill it.
Yeah.
Which is hysterical to me.
It's so sad. And I love the fact that Dogami, who's the guy, I think, and then Dogaressa is the lady, I think. I don't know how to pronounce some of the names in this game. Like, whenever you said Sunder Plane at first, I was like, oh, wait, I misread that. Dogami's always like, Nuzzle Champs 1998, or not Nuzzle Champs, second place in Nuzzle Champs 1998. And then she says, of course we were second place. Just, I hate it so much.
Yeah, so we get to Snowdin Town right after that. This is the first time, I believe, we hear monsters talking about some kind of, not a revolution, but that freedom is coming and that they'll be freed soon. There's a library here you can enter to learn more about souls and what they are. Basically, everybody has souls, but human souls are much more powerful than monster souls. And generally, you can just explore. It's a sleepy little town. Sans and Papyrus live here. There's a tavern here named Grillby's. Grillby's is here. You could come back here at a later time and eat with Sans, but is there anything else in this town that I'm missing?
We've got the shop and the inn, which are next to each other, and those will play a bigger role in a later story that is neither neutral nor pacifist. There are just some other houses scattered about, and there's a bear who's trying to explain how the town works to you. And this is one of my favorite lines. He's talking about how there's no mayor in this town, but if there's an issue, a skeleton tells a fish about it. That's politics. Gets me every time.
Yeah, there's a lot of that here. To get out of here, you have to end up fighting Papyrus. Sans has been warning you all throughout, if you're talking to him, to watch out for Papyrus's blue attack. He says if attacks are blue, just stop. Think of them like a stop sign. A stop sign is red, so think about a blue stop sign. Which that's the one that gets me every time.
Perfect.
Papyrus's fight is pretty standard until he does his blue attack, which, you stand still and dodge it, but then it turns you blue, and this introduces the mechanic of the different color hearts doing different things. So when we're red, we can just move around the box freely. When we turn blue, gravity is activated, so we're on the ground. We could still move, but jumping, causes us to fall. So now we have to jump through Papyrus's attacks. His special attack gets stolen by a dog, so he just does a really cool normal attack instead, featuring bones aligned in the word "cool dude," which it never fails to crack me up that Papyrus is always referring to himself as a cool guy. Or a cool dude on the internet. It's like, I really like that a lot. He's got a shirt that just says cool dude that I'd love to have.
Oh yeah. That he doesn't wear it at this point, but it does come up, and when he does wear it, I literally just every time I'm smiling like an idiot right now if you can't hear the smile.
For a long time, my Twitter banner was the Papyrus dialogue box of him saying, "That's the internet. I'm popular on there."
Nice.
Yeah, you can kill Papyrus at this point, but if you don't, he'll tell you how to move forward. You gotta go to Asgore Dreamer's castle to get through the seal to the surface. He tells you need a human soul, but not to worry because Asgore Dreamer is a super pushover. Nicest guy. Everybody says that he's the nicest guy. Then Papyrus says if you ever want to come back to go on a date, because he misinterprets your kindness as romantic affection, to come back and go on a date with him. Did you do the date?
Oh, absolutely. I take it you did.
Yeah, I did. This is how you quote unquote befriend Papyrus as a character, which you have to do for the pacifist route. Do you want to talk about the date?
I'm happy to talk about the date. I do want to say that when you lose in the fight to Papyrus, he sends you off to what, is kind of a jail cell to him, but it's really just his shed that he made comfortable for a dog, which I find there's like a dog bed and a dog bowl, and like the bars are easy enough to get out of it, so you just keep going back to him over and over again until you beat him, and then you go back to go on a date with him. You go through his and Sans' house. It's hilarious. The dog that stole the special attack is underneath of the sink, and it runs away. And Rick, I couldn't help but laugh at this as a quote music person, end quote. But Sans plays the trombone and a wah wah wah, and Papyrus says, "Quit plaguing me with incidental music."
Yeah.
There's a joke book on quantum physics. You open it, and inside of that is another joke on quantum physics, and inside of the joke's another book, and it just, it stops there. But you do go to Papyrus's bedroom, which is where he's like, yes, or do you want to go do things that people do on a date? Which is almost nothing that happens on a date happens in his room.
There's a line that he uses that I've integrated into my regular life where he says, like, "I'm prepared. You can't spell prepared without several letters from my name," which is good. But the date is just, it's got the same UI as a battle. It's just general Papyrus antics. You've got to pass it to befriend him, things like that. But yeah, once you do that though, you get the opportunity to go back to Grillby's with Sans. This is the first time Sans takes you somewhere and he says he knows a shortcut, and you get to a place that's far away in one screen. That's kind of expanded upon if you go into optional content in the game. But otherwise, this Grillby's trip is, mostly uneventful. He mentions talking flowers, but otherwise that's it. There was a couple times in the game where talking flowers are referenced, but it's a little ambiguous because we start to find what are called echo flowers that just kind of repeat whatever they last heard. So it's another little subversion where it's like, is Flowey known to everybody here? Do people know about him? We're not really sure just yet.
Yeah, so in Grillby's, exactly what Rick said, and I think it's worth mentioning because as time goes on, it's significant that he's friends with everybody in Grillby's. Everyone loves him and says hi to him. He makes jokes. Everyone laughs, and you get the sense that he is respected and loved by everyone. And yeah, that's just it. We're trying to figure out echo flowers and Flowey and all that sort of stuff. But you go back to the waterfall region. That's where we met up with Sans. That's where the music changes for the first time, and there are different monsters there that are less mammalian. It's important if there's an echo flower in the room, you should probably talk to it before you talk to anybody else, because it hears the last thing that somebody said nearby it. Which, Rick, I see you kind of smiling as if you're going to laugh.
Oh, no. Anytime I hear the word mammalian, I just think of the line from SpongeBob where he says he's going to act more mammal.
That's pretty good. It's also at this point in the game that we start to see plaques that are on the wall that tell the story of the war between humans and monsters, which is what comes up at the beginning of the game. And I know I kind of stalled out there, but the reason I stalled out is because depending on how you read it, or at least how I read it, it can kind of come off almost as propaganda, I think.
Sort of, yeah. We're not ever fed the whole story until we progress through the game, but like each time it gets a little clearer and clearer. So the wishing room is where these start. It basically summarizes that humans didn't have any need to attack, but they feared the monsters' ability to take their souls. Mm-hmm. So they relentlessly attacked and killed all the monsters and sealed them underground. Anything can enter, but only a powerful soul can leave. The seal can be destroyed by attacking with a power equal to 7 human souls. And since monster souls are not nearly as powerful, they're basically sealed down under there.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I just find that all very fascinating that we've been fed this dialogue, which is clearly not for you to be reading. I mean, it is, but it isn't. I feel like it's, again, more of a call to arms to the monsters to watch out for humans because, you will learn that you are the 7th soul very shortly hereafter. So, we kind of learn that from a character who we're about to meet named Undyne, and we see that Papyrus, if Papyrus is alive, is talking with Undyne. It's a conversation about you and your character. Papyrus is like, but what do I made friends with them. I didn't hurt them. They didn't succeed in capturing them, and Undyne is pissed. When you move in the weeds, she approaches with a spear, and I'm like, the first time this happened, I was like, oh my God, what is I mean, they really did a good job with the Hitchcockian suspense here. Yeah. So you come out of the weeds with Monster Kid, and he's pumped. He wants to see your kick butt. Papyrus calls you on the cell phone and says that Undyne's opinion of you is very murdery, which always makes me laugh. Undyne does see you, tries to spear you, stops when they lose you, picks up Monster Kid who's in the weeds with you instead of you because you got lost in the weeds again. Again, suspense just keeps building. You're traveling through with Monster Kid through Waterfall. They talk about how this is where you can give the umbrella to the statue, as Rick said earlier.
I never got that. I didn't read it as propaganda at all. It was more to me like a somber remembrance of what happened. But I wanted to jump in just to make sure that you didn't go past this. There is a piano puzzle that we can find here. It's somewhat hidden, and the instructions say to... I don't remember exactly what the instructions say, but they ask you to play the melody. Just the first 8 notes is fine. It doesn't specify what 8 notes. You can unlock that sort of quote-unquote hidden track by progressing forward a little bit. It's raining, and you'll find a statue that's being rained on. And you can choose to put an umbrella on the statue, and that will play this special memory tune. Memory is the name. And if you play that, it unlocks the door to a super powerful artifact, which just gets inexplicably absorbed by an annoying dog that comes in, and then just dashes off of the screen to the annoying dog tune. But it leaves behind dog residue, which is kind of like one of the best items in the game. What it does is, if you use the dog residue, it fills your entire inventory up with dog residue, but it also has a chance of giving you a dog salad. Dog salad is an item that will heal you. It's kind of random. Sometimes it'll heal you a little, sometimes it'll max out your HP. It's kind of random, but again, dog residue is self-populating, so you can kind of have as many dog salads as you want, if you want to put the time into it.
Yes, that is from the artifact, from the dog, and it is worth mentioning, but you have to unlock the puzzle. It is a little bit of a secret to that end. But we learn the melody from the statue that we put the umbrella over, because, exactly, memory theme. As we walk along with Monster Kid at this point, they keep talking about how badass Undyne is. They help you along. They kind of get you up onto this ledge, and that's where you end up being cornered. A flower tells you to look behind you, and there's Undyne. Or am I ahead? Is this at this point or no? Wait. No, I'm mixing something up here, Rick.
Yeah, so I think you just got a little bit ahead. The annoying kid kind of catches up to you at this point. And walks along with you. You get a really nice backdrop of the castle. Mm-hmm. But eventually you get to a ledge, and the annoying kid helps you up, but then says, don't worry about me. I'm going to dash off. This is where the Undine spear chase, where it's like over-under happens. This is...
Yeah.
I think, is this the one where the floor lights up and then the spears come up?
Yeah, that's where I got confused, because I was like, where's the one in the weeds? But then I remember that, like, that's whenever... Yeah, I get some of these encounters with her a little bit mixed up. But that's ultimately the next battle, is that you're trying to evade these light spears that are popping up in the wood beneath you, and you're going through this sort of maze. Eventually, you fall down, and the screen goes dark, and there's this text that's going across the screen, and it's in this voice that we haven't really heard before. And I found that to be quite interesting.
Yeah, it's not clear whether that's like actually happening or a dream or what, but before the voice can identify themselves, you wake up and you're kind of like down in what looks like a sewer-ish place.
Oh yeah, trash zone. But you awaken in a bed of golden flowers again.
Yeah, always the flowers.
The save points, I guess we didn't mention the save points when we were talking about the game, but they are stars. And depending on what version you play in the game, they say different things. this save point in the trash zone is, or the dump, whatever you want to call it, says, viewing the endless cycle of garbage fills you with determination. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always determination. The save points will always tell you what is filling you with determination. The only time they don't, there are a couple that don't say anything, but if you're doing a genocide run and you're still on the genocide run, it'll tell you how many monsters are left to be slaughtered before you can continue.
It's true. So we move through the trash zone, and there's a dummy that's there, and it looks like the dummy from the beginning of the game. And you can either push the dummy with full force, or you can try to talk to the dummy. It doesn't seem much for conversation. No one is happy with this. No, that actually happens within the fight itself. But that's, we're walking through the trash, past the dummy, and then the camera goes back to the dummy, and it plays this electric guitar riff, and the dummy's angry, and it says, I had is it a cousin who lived back at the beginning of the game?
Yeah, he reveals that his cousin was the first dummy, and depending on how you interacted with it, he'll be mad at you. So he'll be mad if you ignored the dummy, he'll be mad if you didn't fight the dummy, and he'll be mad if you did fight the dummy. But that leads into the dummy ghost fight. You can't actually hurt him because he's corporeal. So he's got these guided attacks where he'll summon these like robots that'll shoot missiles at you or shoot fireballs. You basically just have to avoid them until the last minute, hoping that you guide them into him. After a while of just hitting him, he gets more and more frustrated with the robots and then sends them all away, and he says, wait, I don't need friends, I've got knives. And then he throws a knife at you, but then he's like, well, now I'm out of knives.
Yep. It's pretty great. It's a very Matador-style fight because, again, you're guiding the attacks into him. My favorite bit of text in this entire fight is, and this is one of my favorite parts in the game, is while the music's playing in between their turn and your turn, whenever it's about to be your turn again, Mad Dummy is doing an armless ska dance. Always makes me laugh.
Yeah. This is probably my least favorite fight in the game, to be honest, though. Like, I don't like those mechanics where you have to, like, take a guided attack and run away from it and then, lead it to the enemy. I've just never been a fan of that kind of thing. The music is good, though.
Oh, I like the music more than I like the fight itself. Whenever it's basically decided upon by you and Mad Dummy that nothing's going to happen, and I mean, it's not said, but it's kind of implied.
Well, it is said. He says that you'll just have to stay there forever because you can't kill him, and so you'll just be there forever.
Yeah, it's you're not going anywhere until, quote, acid rain starts falling, and it's Napstablook who is crying over the fight. He said, "Oh no, you guys look like you were having so much fun. Oh no, I'm so sorry." And he's so upset that he has interrupted the time between you and the dummy fight, but ultimately you are saved by him from fighting Mad Dummy for forever.
Yeah, and right up ahead is his house. He invites you there, but then he's like, yeah, you don't have to come if you don't want to, but you can go there. If you go into Napstablook's house, you can listen to some of his music, which it cracks me up because one is just the same trombone lick played over and over again. It's like, I don't know, 2 or 4 bars, depending on how you count it. The second track is the same thing, but kind of with like reverb. And the last one is just this really basic 8-bit, and it just plays over and over and over again. It's so funny to me. But yeah, we learned that Napstablook is really into music. You can go into his fridge and he gives you a ghost sandwich, which he eats, or which you try to eat, I should say. And then he says, after a meal, I like to lie on the floor and feel like garbage. It's a family tradition. And you can do that with him, which is really cool because if you wait long enough, the music kind of cuts out and gets ethereal and the background turns into like swirling space. I don't know if this has any greater purpose or not, or if it's just like a nice little Easter egg.
Yeah, I think it is just kind of, I don't know what it is, but I'd say an Easter egg is about it. It's very funny though. He also has a farm of snails that are kind of, you can race them if you want.
Oh yeah, that's where he says he works there and you can race Thunder Snail.
Yeah, which he says, to encourage your snail, press this button. So, anybody who's playing this for the first time is going to like really try to encourage their snail to go quickly. But what ends up happening is you can catch your snail's shell on fire. I don't even know if you can win this race at all.
Yeah, you encourage the snail too hard. You know, we've all been taught from an early age that if you encourage somebody too hard, they catch on fire. And that's what happens to thunder snail. Precisely
what happens. When we exit this area to the right, that's whenever we're still going through a waterfall. And if we make our turn down a dark path, we end up in a particular place. And we're fighting enemies like Aaron, who is sweating bullets literally, and Washua, who's rinsing a pizza. But this is where when we go off the beaten path, we end up in Temmie Village. And Rick, I'm dying to know what you think of Temmie Village.
Yeah, Temmie Village, to get there, you have to... So in this area, you're, like, lighting up... they're like glow mushrooms, and they illuminate the path in front of you. And if you light and unlight them in a certain order, the path to Temmie Village will open up. The music is like... It's got to be the same patch that they use for the Rugrats, because it's got that same... Yes. It's the exact same thing. And it's a village full of Temmies. Temmies are cats with hair, like human haircut, that vibrate constantly and talk in this really broken English with random capitalizations. It's very bizarre. I think this is about as 2014 Tumblr as it gets for me. Too much Temmie for me is like, okay, I'm good. One thing that cracks me up about this is there's a picture on the wall of a Temmie on top of a sea dragon, and the text says "Rich History of Tem." And, like, I can't imagine this creature doing that.
I mean, we don't know. It's the history, right? And history is written by the winners, and I haven't seen any dragons, so I'm not
fair.
Sure.
That's true.
The first time that I ever saw Temmie Village, I was in hysterics. And there's a store, and Temmie is talking about trying to, like, go to college or send their child to college. It's very silly.
That's how you get the best armor in the game, is if you pay for Tem's college, which is 1,000 gold.
It was 10,000.
Or it's something really big like that.
It's really big, yeah.
But you can unlock the Tem armor, which is the best armor in the game, which it's not available on the Genocide run, interestingly enough. But I think this is also the only place in the game where you can sell items, because if you try to sell items anywhere else, they'll be like, no, I don't need any more junk. I'm trying to get rid of my junk.
Yep.
But yeah, it's pretty good. You can find a Temmie looking at an egg, and she says, like, Tem, watch egg. Tem, become proud parent. And the egg is hard-boiled. You can find out.
Yeah,
Temmie Village is one of a kind.
It really is. The humor is great. After we leave Temmie Village and we traverse our way through this part of the waterfall region, it turns out that this is the part. This is the
Echo Flower part.
This is the Echo Flower part where they say behind you, and Undyne approaches you and says that Asgore can become a god with a seventh soul. But Monster Kid inadvertently saves you. Because they kind of show up and goes, wow, you got front row seats to this. And Undyne just takes Monster Kid away. You keep going along the path, and Monster Kid's like, yeah, you say something mean to me, and you can or not. You can, I don't know, it's a little bit silly, but ultimately Undyne comes to you to get you. Shortly thereafter, the Monster Kid does fall off of the bridge, and you go to help him. Undyne is approaching you and is kind of confused by this, and Monster Kid says, if you're gonna hurt them, you're gonna have to get through me first. Undyne leaves, Monster Kid also leaves, and that's whenever we go around the corner. And who do we find but Undyne?
Yeah, I don't understand why this annoying Monster Kid is in the game. Like, I don't think it's additive at all. It seems like his only purpose is to emphasize that, like, humans and monsters can be friends because, you know, the power of friendship is a trope we've seen time and time again, but that's kind of this game's thesis. But our entire experience with the game is learning that humans and monsters can be friends. So I don't know. This kid's annoying. But when he's on the bridge, you can let him fall. You don't have to choose to save him.
Right.
Because he's hanging, and Undine will like walk forward a tiny bit each time. So I let him fall just to see what would happen. And essentially what happens is like Undine jumps down to save him, and then you can hear him talk like about how humans are bad, etc., etc. But then, yes, we do come to Undine, and this is the fight. She'll reprimand you. It does this a lot. She'll reprimand you for anybody that you may have killed thus far. This is the first fight in the game that I think is somewhat tough.
Oh, 100%. I found her to be, don't get me wrong, like I had some stumbling blocks with Papyrus and so forth, but she really does a number on you. And what she does at the beginning of the match is she turns you green. And so you're sitting here, what does the color green mean? Well, now you have to face attacks head on, as she says, and it's your job to block the attacks. Some of the funny text that happen between the fight is that she suplexes a large boulder just because she can, smells like sushi, and eventually she starts to throw spears at you, and she keeps talking about how humans are full of determination. Well, I'm determined too. And she starts talking about like all the things that Alphys has said about humans. But there is one attack where she turns you red and you have to dodge a spear. When you are red, that is your moment in neutral or in, well, especially in pacifist, where you can go to flee for the first time, because you can't go to flee when you're green. You can't go anywhere. You just have to block attacks, which are arrows. And then you're just running for it at this point. And she keeps stopping you, and the cycle goes over and over again.
Yeah, just to expand on what green mode actually is, when you're green, you've got a shield in front of you, and she's firing arrows at you from the 4 cardinal directions. And she'll fire them in different patterns. You have to block them. And she can also hit you with her spear to turn you red again. So it's a combination of blocking in the 4 cardinal directions and also the traditional bullet hell patterns. But you can choose to fight her. If you do choose to fight her, she will literally fight herself to death. Her attacks kind of slow down as she dies, and eventually she does. To pacifist, you just kind of have to run to Hotland, where she collapses from heat, and then there will be a water cooler inexplicably there that you have to get a cup of water. You have to get a cup of water and dump it on her, at which point she leaves. If you go to the next screen and then try to go back, I think she's gone. Yep. I don't know if that implies that she's dead or that she's just left, but that will lock you out of the befriending of her, so you won't be able to go further with that.
It's true.
If you do save her, though, Papyrus will call you up. I think he calls you up a little beforehand, like while she's chasing you, and will be like, we should all hang out because you guys would be good friends. Meanwhile, she's like chucking spears at you. But you can go back and hang out with her. You go to her house with Papyrus. Papyrus says, whoopsie doopsie, I have to go to the bathroom, and jumps out the window. And that just leads to sort of similar with Papyrus. It's just a lot of antics with her. She is determined to have a good time and cook, and everybody will have fun. And I think it ends with her house burning down or something to that effect.
Yeah, she basically, Papyrus and she were supposed to have a cooking lesson, a private one-on-one cooking lesson, and Papyrus hiding you behind him has really kind of pissed her off, and she's like, you're my enemy and all these things. And then she's like, Papyrus comes in and goes like, oh, unless you're not up to the challenge. And then she's like, no, I will be friends with you. And what's really funny to me is that your sprite, your character, she literally picks you up by the top of your head and like turns you at a 90-degree angle and like jumps around the kitchen with you. Has me laughing. And exactly right. You're doing this cooking lesson and it does burn her house down. And if you approach the door while the house is on fire, the text that comes up is, sounds like only fire lives here now.
I didn't know about that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. These befriending things are okay. Like, I don't don't love them. Like, Papyrus's is okay. I really don't like the Alphys one, but I think that's just because I don't really like Alphys very much.
Same.
They serve as just building the character and kind of building out their characterization. It's fine enough. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you do get to punch vegetables with full force, and you knock over a tomato.
That's right.
And,
I forgot about that line.
You stir the noodles with a spear. Yeah. That's great. But we go back to Hotland, and that's where the laboratory is. And that's where we encounter your apparent least favorite character and my least favorite character, Dr. Alphys.
Yes, Hotland also has another favorite track of mine. I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one as you're walking through with like the arrow puzzles that's kind of like techno-ish. That's another one that I really like a lot. Yeah, I don't know why I dislike Alphys. It's the whole, like... I mean, I think it's a combination of the whole, like, I'm so timid that I'm cute, and the, like, blatant overuse of social media that you get pinged with constantly. I think that's another thing that's, like, super internet humor that, like, I can't deal with too much of that all at one time, you know?
Yeah, no, it was, I'm guessing it's very funny to a very, very niche percentage of people who enjoy this game, which, again, hats off to Toby Fox for finding humor that can relate with pretty much anybody at some point in this game, but I didn't find it very funny. The lab where Alphys is, we meet Alphys, who's like, you weren't supposed to be here so soon. You weren't supposed to be here yet. And is very shocked to meet you. Alphys explains that they made Metaton, who is, kind of an entertainment machine, but they were built with anti-human combat features, but that you should be fine. And then you hear like a giant metal slam, and it's kind of like Jurassic Park with like a T-Rex drawing near. Like you just hear these giant footsteps, and there's like an awkward stare between the two of you, and it keeps getting closer and closer until the wall breaks apart and we meet Metaton.
Yeah, Metaton is a robot on like just a square robot on a wheel that loves being a showman, like loves nothing more than to perform. And we see this right away because we get into a quiz show type of deal. It's the same screen as like the combat UI, but he's asking you questions like what's the king's real name and stuff like that, but also absurd ones like an actual legit math problem or what is this monster? And it'll show a monster's face, but then when you answer, it zooms out, and it's just Metaton wearing a shirt of the monster's face. The trick here is to look at Alphys, because she is miming what letter you should pick to get the right answer.
I never knew that. I never paid attention to Alphys, probably because I don't like Alphys, but I didn't know that was what's happening.
Yeah, she'll like mime the letter. And then when Metaton finds out, that's why he's like, "Oh, have you been helping the human? Shame on you. That's not fun."
Yeah,
Metaton's great. I genuinely think he's a good character.
I agree entirely. When you go to your act, like what you can do against Metaton, you can click on the word cry or check to see what their stats are. But if you click on cry, it says screaming is against the rules. And the only reward for correctly answered questions are more questions. In this fight, it's revealed that Alphys has a crush on Undyne, which I thought was it's you know, I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, I think it feeds into the whole like I'm so timid, I'm cute, ooh kind of thing.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I know a lot of people are really into that whole relationship, and then they have just gone hog wild with shipping other characters, and whatever. It's whatever. Not for me, though. It is kind of cool, though, because after the quiz show, Alphys will upgrade your phone. That's not cool, because then you get constant pings of social media of Alphys updating her status, which in some ways is kind of funny, because like we've all known people who were like that in high school, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I was kind of like that in high school for sure. Sometimes whenever I'm looking at Facebook memories from high school, like I will just straight up delete some posts. I was so obnoxious, but I think a lot of us were, because like Facebook and MySpace were so new back then.
Absolutely, and we were a lot younger, less seasoned, you know.
You can check out some of the books and stuff that Alphys has of quote-unquote human history. Many of them are like anime and manga. One of her human history books is a comic book of scantily clad chefs flinging energy pancakes at each other, which is absolutely something I would read or watch if it were an anime, I think.
Yeah,
Flapjack Frank would maybe be a character's name.
Maybe, Rick? Have you written?
Yes, my projecting of hatred of fan fiction is entirely internally directed. I'm just hiding behind my shame.
We all are, Rick. We all are.
The chef who shagged me is probably the working title.
Ooh, is right. So we have our upgraded phone. It goes off like 3 times per screen an area that you're in, and it's like, I'm gonna call the human, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and it's just like I get really tired of that stuff with Alphys very quickly, to the point that, you know, I went right from neutral into pacifist, and I just went BA just to skip over everything that they had to say. You enter a dark room, and of course you're encountering enemies along the way, like you are in all of these places. You've got all of the lesser enemies, but
this is where
dark.
you find Sunderplane, who will give you a condescending barrel roll.
This is Sunderplane, and this is Vulcan, who's very cute.
Oh, yeah, that's the active volcano that you have to hug.
It's a child volcano that you have to hug. Make their attacks more extreme, and that's how you win, is by making them hurt you more, basically. This writing, come on. But we enter this dark room. Is it a dark room at this point, or is this not a dark room? I just know what's next.
Yeah, you get to the dark room after going through some of those arrow puzzles where you walk onto an arrow and it'll shoot you across a platform.
Yes.
These are mostly pretty straightforward. There's one that comes up in a little bit that took a mild amount of thinking, but I mean, mostly it's just it just serves to get to the next area. But you're right, you walk into a dark area and Alphys turns on the lights, but it's a kitchen, because Mettaton now has a cooking show.
It is cooking with a killer robot, I think is what the show is called. And Mettaton, you know, is saying hello beauties and gentle beauties or whatever else that Mettaton says, which I just love Mettaton. But they tell you all the ingredients you need to get. So you get the eggs, you get the sugar, you get the milk. And then, you know, the Mettaton says, oh, there's one ingredient we still need. A human soul. Pulls out a chainsaw. The music gets really intense and they start revving it toward you.
Yeah, and then Alphys gives him a call and is like, what if somebody is vegan? And then because that makes for a more interesting show, Mettaton's like, oh, yes, this is great. Go walk over to the right and get that Mettaton brand canned human soul substitute. Mm-hmm. So you go to get it, but then it shoots up on a platform, which takes you into a little mini game where your cell phone inexplicably turns into a jetpack, and you have to fly up to the top to get it in the time limit. All the while, Mettaton in full like chef regalia will be like throwing eggs at you, throwing flour, throwing sugar, things like that to deter you.
It's part of your phone upgrades.
Yeah, these phone upgrades are ridiculous. I would like to know in what year 201X takes place, or is it 20XX? I don't know, because
no, you're right, 201X.
The technology is getting a little extreme. And also, you know, going back before the era of 2020, I'd be fine with that in some ways. But you get to the top, and then you go to the bottom, and Mettaton says, well, it's okay, because haven't you ever watched a cooking show before? I baked the cake before we started filming anyway. And that's how you get through that. you get more hot land at this point, and you find an elevator that will go to Asgore's castle. But before you can progress further, we find two characters that we saw earlier, two big buff bro guards. They come up and they're like, oh, this is like totally embarrassing, but like we saw a like human that like looked like you, and like we're gonna have to kill you now.
I love this. I love this humor. And two things just to go back for a hot second. When you look at the microwave in the kitchen, it says it's a microwave. That's great if you're a microwave fan. And then just before the fight, one of the save areas is called the bad opinion zone because Alphys just got done giving a really poor opinion of something. And so the game literally labels an area as the bad opinion zone. But we encounter the guards.
Great if you're a fan of a microwave. That's too good.
It gets me every time. I mean, honestly, if you haven't played this game and you want to experience all of this for this first time, you know, click on everything because almost everything has an absurd commentary.
That's the same kind of humor as saying like, oh, we're playing Undertale, which was created by Toby Undertale.
100%. And it's like, also, whenever you grab the cup of water that you helped Undyne with earlier, you know, if you walk a certain direction, it says, the water in the cup evaporated. The cup also evaporated. Like, no. What? It's great. But we have these Broverload guards who are like, we have to kill you. And they're bouncing in sync with each other with their giant oversized swords.
And giant oversized muscles.
I'll say. One is called RG1 and RG2. It's implied that they are Royal Guards 1 and Royal Guards 2. You can do either option, I believe, to either of them, but if you polish the armor of one, it makes him sweaty in his armor and he has to take it off, and the other guard gets nervous and has feelings for them.
Yeah, they take off their top armor, revealing their big buff physique. And then the other guard like starts sweating uncontrollably, and you like whisper to let into their true feelings. Like this whole thing could be done in 2 turns if you know what to click, but you convince the one to like convince his feelings to the other one. And he's like, bro, I love when we bounce in sync with our weapons, bro. And like, I just want to get ice cream with you, bro. And then they do. The other one is like, or no, the other one's like, well, bro, do you want to go get ice cream, bro? And then, you know, they take off.
Yeah, cool. That sounds great. And the one tries to play it off like, psych, I got you so bad. And the one's like, can we please get ice cream?
Yeah, that's very good. I like that a lot.
I love that Toby Fox has done this with relationships in this game. It doesn't feel like he's pushing an agenda as much as he's just saying let people love each other. Because the 2 guards are men. And Alphys is a lady who has a crush on Undyne, who's a lady. And I love all of that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, people just, I don't know. I think it's nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the message is good. I still don't like the Alphys Undine thing. I just really don't like how they interact with each other at all.
No, I don't like it, but...
You know, the bro guards is funny because, like, that's kind of just a trope, right? Like, you gotta act macho so like everybody knows that you're super macho, and like not being super straight is not super macho, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But I agree with you. I'm sure there are some shitheads out there that like saw that and then saw the Undine Alphys thing, and they're like, oh, this SJW is just pushing his agenda on us. I'm gonna go play a real game, like Call of Duty.
Yeah. If you're playing zombies, it's okay. This is a pro zombies podcast. The next, we're still making our way through Hotland, and the next thing we encounter is lights on. We're on like a news show with Metaton, who's having us report on something. We are the correspondent. There are 6 items around the room that are completely not harmful at all, and Metaton asks us which thing we want to report on, and depending on which item you pick, there's like a basketball, a script, a dog,
a glass of water.
I was going to say a glass of water. But depending on which one you pick, it doesn't really matter because they're all bombs and you have to defuse these bombs in 2 minutes.
Yeah. One thing that made me laugh throughout this segment is he keeps saying things like, what are you reporting to our 10 viewers? And then he's like, oh, but turns out these are all bombs. What a shock to our 9 viewers. And like the view count just keeps going down every time he mentions it. That's funny to me. The defusing the bombs, they're just like whatever the bomb is, whether it's the actual bomb or the dog or whatever, they're just kind of moving around the screen. And when they move into the center within the specified area, you just have to click defuse. So it's not too bad. When you defuse them all, though, he's like, good thing that you defused all of those bombs so the real big bomb won't blow up in 2 minutes. Now it's going to blow up in 2 seconds. To which Alphys kind of phones in and, does her thing and foils the plan. Once again, Alphys saves the day.
So we continue making our way through Hotland. And there are some really, I don't want to say simple because to each their own. I mean, it can be as difficult as it is to you, and that's fine. But there's some puzzles that are of relatively easy difficulty to open doors through Hotland, which is fine. But then that's whenever what happens next is we encounter our next mid-tier upper boss, who is Muffet, who has your favorite music in the entire game, Rick, as you said earlier.
I don't know that I would call it my favorite in the entire game, but it's very good.
It is good.
You'll walk into a room with spider webs, and you'll hear the spiders laughing and saying, like, I heard that the human likes to step on spiders, and things like that.
Gossip.
And then Muffet will come out, and she says, I heard that they're awfully stingy with their money, because there's a bake sale outside, but everything they're selling is, like, more gold than you can carry, so you can't buy anything. Which leads into the fight with Muffet. And this is where we get purple mechanics. So the purple mechanics are interesting in that purple lines will run laterally up and down the screen, and you can move horizontally among the lines, and you can also jump up and down to other lines. So you're kind of dodging stuff that way. And if you let the fight go on enough, you also have to like climb as a monster below you is trying to get you. You can actually, if you picked up the spider donut or spider cider at the beginning of the game and you use it in this fight, the fight ends immediately because she says like, oh, what, did you steal that? And then she gets a telegram from the spiders in the ruins who are like, no, they bought that from us. They're good people. And then she's like, oh, okay, this is a misunderstanding.
He. The monster she has, if you actually do opt to take on Muffet, the monster that she has, she calls her pet, is horrifying, actually, as it climbs the purple lines to attack you. I thought that this mechanic for a fight was really pretty creative. I rather liked it.
Yeah, I go back and forth as to whether this is my favorite color mechanic or if it's the green one. Because I'm not wild about the yellow one that comes up with Metaton. I mean, it's fine, but yeah, I'm not sure. The purple one is fun though.
It's not just necessarily easy, which is kind of nice. Now, Rick, the next scene in the game, I'm guessing, is the parody from that Final Fantasy VI moment, which is it?
Yeah, this is a direct homage to the opera scene in Final Fantasy VI, which is a great big scene. But this is just a little tip of the cap to it. It's really nice. Metaton appears on a balcony and he is singing to you, basically about how you're going to die.
You'll go to the dungeon and then you'll die a lot.
I don't remember if I like accidentally just closed out of the game or what, but if you come back to this and redo it before it starts, he's just like, hey, you've heard all this before. Do you want to just skip to the good stuff? And then you could be like, yeah, and he'll be like, sigh, okay. But yeah, it drops you down into a dungeon. And this is where Papyrus's big randomizer puzzle comes back once more. Metaton will be like, yeah, you've encountered this about 100 rooms ago, so you should know the rules. I'm pretty sure you can't actually like get through this. But what you can do is you can choose to just stand there and not do anything as Metaton is singing to you, and that'll run out the clock too. And then whenever it gets to the time to fight him, he'll be like, well, you stepped on a green square, and you know what that means. You have to fight a monster. Well. Welly, well. And then he's like, well, you didn't actually step on one, but too bad.
And he is the monster, as he tells you. At that point, you act. You go to your phone and you press the yellow button as Alphys instructs you, because Mettaton tells you, aren't you going to answer your phone? Which I find extremely funny. You turn into a yellow heart, as Rick alluded to earlier. The yellow heart, you turn upside down, and now you are like a Space Invaders level ship that shoots lasers, and you fire it at Mettaton, who is like, oh no, oh no, like you've defeated me. And my favorite is, you were stronger than I thought, etc. Literally comes up on the screen.
Yeah, he just says etc. etc. He surrenders after one hit. So this you're starting to get a feeling that these fights are all scripted, which we do find out is the case. Yeah, so the next destination is the MTT Resort, which is a Mettaton-themed resort that has a fountain with a statue of Mettaton in the center, spitting water, not into the pool that's around it, but onto the floor, which I love. There's a shop that's to the right with two characters named Caddy and Bratty that are just like Mettaton fans. I don't know that there's any useful information in here. You can learn more background about like the Deltarune stuff that you learn from the turtle shopkeeper, or what Asgore is like and things like that. But, you know, otherwise just a place to buy stuff, but not sell. Sans is there, and he asks you to go to dinner with him via another shortcut. Did you do this dinner with him?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I do it every time. Yeah. It's a really interesting thing that he reveals to you. He reveals that he basically knows Toriel without knowing Toriel. He talks about this lady whose voice he heard, and like they exchanged knock-knock jokes through this door, and he made a promise that he would protect any human that came through that door. And this is where he says one of my favorite lines in the whole game, which is he's like saying, oh, you know what I'm trying to say though, right? He's like, I know you've been through a lot. He goes, but you know what I'm trying to say, he says. And his eyes, for the first time, basically dip out his white pupils, and it just says, you'd be dead where you stand. And like that, the music cuts out. My skin crawled.
Yeah, he plays this off as a joke, but like we learn through these optional dialogues that Sans is much more powerful than we're led to believe, based on his lazy personality. But yeah, we do learn that Toriel asked him to take care of us or keep an eye out for us, which he's been doing. There's also a character here that I love, the resort comedian, which is Snowdrake's father, it's implied. And his dialogue is like, my son is trying to become a comedian. Ha 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 ha. And he's so bad at jokes. Ha ha ha. That's not funny. And then he'll be like, I'm dissuading him from becoming a comedian. I'm a terrible father. Ha ha ha. That's not funny. And then I never fail to laugh at that one. I'm a terrible father. Ha ha ha. That's not funny.
It's yeah, it's.
I think that was one of the few characters that was submitted from an outside source that wasn't Toby or Temmie, I think.
That's correct. You're right. The name is escaping me, but that's correct. And I love the fact that Snowdrake is trying to be a comedian like their dad, and the dad's like, nah. And yes, Rick is saying correctly, it is father. They spell it with an AH at the end. It's very funny. We get to see the lobby for the first time after the fight, or not after the fight, listen to me, after the meal with Sans, and that's where we have the statue spraying the water onto the floor. We can go and deliver food to people who are in the rooms in the hotel if we want, but there are people standing around in the lobby itself. Caddy and Bratty are outside in an alleyway selling food, but inside of the hotel is a character named Burger Pants, which I don't understand.
I think I missed this one.
Burger Pants is inside to the upper right-hand corner of the hotel lobby. Rick, you would love Burger Pants. If you missed Burger Pants, I think you would really enjoy the dialogues at Burger. I'm gonna stop saying Burger Pants now.
Burger Pants. Bob Dole.
He calls you little buddy a lot. Sometimes his facial expressions are some of the best in the game. You can buy steak in the shape of Mettaton's face there. You can buy a glam burger. You can buy a starfay. It's all very, very popular seeming food. At this point, though, we're getting to the core. We're getting to almost to Asgore himself. I thought that they were more difficult, upper tier, common enemies throughout the core. What were your thoughts on them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is definitely the hardest regular enemies in the game. We get, like, the full form of Frogget, Mystic Frogget, a knight. I think it's called Good Knight. I could be wrong.
Knight.
And then the full form of Magic. And they can be difficult if you don't take care of them. The best strategy, I think, is to just, like, spare one right away so you don't have 2 or 3 attacks coming at you at all times. But this is where it becomes clear that Alphys doesn't know what's going on anymore because somebody is changing her information or the reality, like what's actually out here. Because she's now telling us to go directions that are wrong. She straight up says, like, I don't have this on my map, etc., etc. There are a couple of puzzles and switches here that lead you to different places, but ultimately you'll find Mettaton at the end, who explains that this has all been a ruse. Alphys has been watching you the whole adventure, which, was alluded to even as far back as Snowden, or before Snowden, when he found that camera in the bush, right, Ben?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And she got attached to you, like people who, watch shows, binge watch shows do. And created fake scenarios with Mettaton so she could save you using the cell phone, so you would think that she's all great and cool and stuff. Mettaton says right here that he doesn't want to harm humans, he just wants to entertain, but then he immediately says that his new segment is Attack of the Killer Robot, and that he hired people in the core to try and kill you. So, not really sure what's going on with Mettaton here, but we do have to fight him.
He has a switch on his back, which is how we think that we turn them off.
Yeah, oh, whoopsie. Just a casual switch back here.
It more or less actually transforms Mettaton into Mettaton EX, which I love this moment because it's one of the only moments where we actually hear like a voice in the game. And it's this digitized voice going, oh, yes. And Mettaton is this extremely beautiful, flamboyant man cyborg creature.
Yeah, weirdly attractive human for the graphics that are presented. It's bizarre looking.
Hardest fight for me, to be quite honest with you. This fight always takes me multiple tries.
Yeah, I think this fight is a lot of fun. I think it's maybe the second most fun fight that you get to do in the game. He'll throw like little Mettaton robots at you that'll throw bombs at you. He will have like arms that will shoot back and forth. He has bombs. He rewinds the action too.
He uses his legs.
There's one point where you get a union regulated break where you just sit there. And there's one point where he asks you to type an essay about what you love the most about Mettaton, which I guess there are some like cue words that if you type them, he'll like comment on them. I think I said something like big butt. And he said like, oh, lewd or naughty or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. But to spare this fight, you have to get the views up to, I think, above 12,000.
I think it's above 10. Yeah.
But that'll get him to take callers, which turns out to be Napstablook, which is pretty funny.
It's very obvious.
He like talks for 2 seconds and he's like, oh, I didn't mean to talk for so long, and he hangs up. And then I think Caddy and Bratty call, but it gives him a change of heart where he's like, no, the human world, they've got tons of stars, but these people only have me, so I'm going to stay here. And then he runs out of batteries. Or you could just kill him, which is what I did this past one, my past neutral playthrough. I just fought him. Alphys gets real upset either way, which is really bizarre because, like, you can destroy him or let his batteries run out, and either way, she's, like, grieving the exact same way.
Weird. I didn't realize. I've never hurt Mettaton, so I didn't know.
Yeah, he's a tough one to hurt. When you're fighting him, he like loses his arms and then his legs, and yeah, it's a fun battle though.
And if you don't know that it's about getting the ratings up, it's very hard because I just kept trying to spare. I was like, I'm just going to spare you the whole fight. Nope, didn't work. Couldn't spare him. And his attacks were at like the hardest level, and I didn't realize I needed to get the ratings up to over 10, 9, 12, whatever it is.
Is it telegraphed that you have to do that at some point?
I don't think he ever says that.
I can't remember.
I don't think so, but I don't know. But he gets excited, and that's what causes him to stand down, realizing that he's more important to the underground, and he opts to stay. So Alphys confesses to lying to you earlier, and that it actually takes a monster and a human soul to cross the barrier, so someone has to die.
Yes, and then she feels so bad for lying to you, but will soon later learn also lying to everybody, that she runs away. But this leads us to a gray area called New Home that is identical to the beginning. And this is where we start encountering monsters that give you the premise of the game. So what happened, and we get these through like battles, but you can't actually do anything. So what happened was the king's son, Azrael, brought a human to the castle, and everybody loved the human, so they became like a kid to Azrael and Toriel, that is. The kid became ill and wanted to see flowers from their home village, but they died. Azrael took the human, absorbed their soul, and then crossed the barrier with the human's body to bury the human on a bed of golden flowers. But as he's doing that, he gets caught by humans, and, they misunderstood, and they thought that Azrael killed him. So they just unleash on Azrael. So he walks back to the underground and dies, meaning that Asgore and Toriel lost 2 kids in one day. And Asgore blamed this all on the humans completely and decided that any human that falls down here will die so he can take their souls and shatter the barrier forever. Which, now that we have the full backstory, it's kind of hard to blame Asgore at this point, No,
and that's exactly it. Like with the plaques, I recognize that they were more of like a somber kind of, this is what actually happened. But, for a while there, I studied it going, is this Asgore just trying to manipulate, kind of get people angry with things? Or rather, get people angry over things. So at this point, we've got these monsters recalling the story to us. We find 2 keys in New Home, which is the gray version of the home from earlier. We use these keys to get into the basement. We walk through the basement. We ascend. We keep traversing this area that's kind of labyrinth-like. And that's when we find ourselves in this beautifully lit room where we're kind of cast in our own shadows. And the room is devoid of music. I think it's completely silent in there until we hear some bells toll. And there's the shadow of Sans for the first time in a very long time, who is there to remind you that it is time for you to be judged.
Yeah, this is the most famous scene in the game. I mean, this game is known for this scene and then the Sans boss fight in the genocide route.
It absolutely is. So, depending on what you've done in this game, determines a lot of things. For the time being, we'll just keep it kind of neutral, because we'll cover the other 2 in just a second, because they won't, So if you've done the neutral route, he'll say like, you weren't entirely innocent. You're a little bit naive, but like, for the most part, you were great. He explains that EXP is not experience, but execution points. That LV is not love, but level of violence. And so Flowey lied to you at the very beginning of the game about the things that you're supposed to achieve.
Yeah, he's got a great line that says regarding love, the more you kill, the easier it is to distance yourself from yourself and continue to hurt others. And, I think this is a good twist in the game, because it's not, playing RPGs, nobody ever really thinks about EXP or LV, meaning level. And I thought it was a good subversion. I remember getting to this point for the first time and being like, oh shit, like this is really cool. I never thought about it that way, that like the more monsters we kill, the easier it is to kill more monsters in any other game, that is. And now putting it into a context where like the monsters aren't just random enemies, but like actual living members of a community. I thought this was really good. Like I don't get the hate for this that some people have. I really don't.
Well, and that's what Toby Fox was trying to do with this, is that he wanted to turn a lot of things on their head and like kind of question, not unlike BioShock, the first game, is that, we're just following orders. Well, in this game, it's like, well, wait, why do we just do EXP? Why do we just do LV? Why do, and I love that. I thought it was so smart.
And I know you didn't play through the entire genocide route, but it does take a BioShock 1 kind of thing, where it's like, it's critiquing you for doing things in a video game just because they're video game things to do and you can do them. We'll get to that maybe towards the end, but yeah, I think this is a great scene. This is also, if you're doing the Sans, if you're doing the genocide route, this is where you fight Sans too. So no matter what route you're on, this is kind of like a big climax of the game.
Yeah, this is one of the inevitable scenes in the game. After the Judgment Room, we find ourselves approaching the Throne Room, which is covered in yellow flowers and greenery, and it's silent in there with the exception of some birds singing. And we approach, for the first time in the entire game, Asgore. And they built this up so much, the amount of tension you have. And there's this giant beast in front of you, larger than Toriel, of the same race. And he turns around and goes, oh, it's a beautiful day. Oh, hi there. Howdy. How can I? And he like backs up in horror because he recognizes that he's going to have to kill you. And he thinks that you're aware. In fact, he knows that you're aware, but he still doesn't want to kill you. And he says, you know what must happen next now? And he goes into the next room. He's like, think of it as going to the dentist.
Yeah, that's one thing. I've talked about this before, but one thing that I really dislike in video games is like what we ran into with Spyro is like villains being evil just for the sake of being evil, or morality being so 100% in either direction that it loses meaning. Like this game plays with morality in a way that's more nuanced than that, because like you said, Ben, when you're talking with Asgore, he says, I so badly want to say, would you like a cup of tea? But you know how it is. And then right as you're about to fight him, he says, are you ready? If you are not, I understand. I am not either. So it's like, it's more nuanced than just like good versus evil, which like this game does a little bit, but not here. So this is really good, I think.
And one thing that I have to just say right now, before we, cover the ending of Neutral Run and everything else, this was all a story written by one person. Flabbergasting to me. Flabbergasting. Stories inside of stories, and characters with this amount of turmoil within themselves. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, he knew what he wanted. And, this is one of those situations where I think being largely a team of one, largely, not exclusively, benefited incredibly.
Unbelievable.
Oh, the Asgore fight has some great music too.
Oh, it does. We enter the room and it's this white and black like optical illusion that's this long hallway. He goes, this is the barrier, and he's like, well, here we go, more or less. I'm paraphrasing here. But then all 7 containers, 6 of which have different colored hearts in them, surround you. And it's implied that the empty one is for you. And then the Asgore music starts. It's very slow at first. And it, if I'm not mistaken, it's not a paraphrase, but a variation on the Toriel fight music.
I don't quite remember, but that sounds right.
One's in like a really, really like fiendish fast, like 4/4, and the other one is in 6/8. Yeah, I think they're the same theme, at least close. But he destroys the mercy option in the fight.
Yeah, he spears it with his spear. And his fighting style is similar to Toriel with fire magic and things like that. He'll try to hit you with his spear that will alternate like blue and orange, so you have to know when to move and when to stay still. And yeah, since the mercy tab is destroyed, you have to fight him. So you're gonna take him down to the end.
You can try to talk to him, and it'll do a little bit. If you've saved the butterscotch pie, it has an impact on him and lessens his attack power.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because he remembers the smell, and it lowers his ability to hurt you. But it's right. There comes a point where the dialogue says talking's not working anymore, and you have to fight him, and you have to beat him. You have to bring him all the way down.
And at the end, he just sort of recounts the events, and he says, like, he no longer wants the power or the war. He just wants to see his wife. He just wants to see his kid. And he says, take my soul, like, end this. So you can either spare him or kill him. If you spare him, though, Flowey gets to him and kills him anyway. This is where it diverges in the true pacifist, which we'll talk about. But for the remainder of Neutral, Flowey comes back and he calls you an idiot, and he reminds you it's kill or be killed, and the game resets, but the game glitches out. And then now the new start is titled Flowey, My World, level 9999, time 9999 with 99 seconds. When you load that, you're walking in a dark room, you see your actual save file, which Flowey smashes, breaking it. So this is getting real, like, end of Earthbound, same kind of deal. Really, really good call out to that. But Flowey has all the human souls now, as well as Asgore's, and he says he's going to kill you and then just save over it so he can kill you over and over and over. So we're officially breaking the wall now. We have our first official character that knows about save and load states.
This battle is absolutely chaotic because Flowey, harnessing the power of these 6 souls, just is doing these impossible to dodge attacks on you and is just wailing on you and is basically killing you over and over again. And you'll come back and you'll just keep getting your rear end whooped over and over again until the souls start to revolt against Flowey. One by one, they start to aid you, and there are, of course, 6 different incarnations of how this happens. They give you an act option, which has been taken away from you. Basically, you're just evading for your life at this point, unless you find a floating act button. And then eventually you get the ability to fight. Rick, it's just a mess.
Yeah, there's a certain point after which you basically can't lose. You can lose at first, and then when you reload it, Flowey fills the screen with laughter, saying he's just going to kill you. Which, by the way, his design, Photoshop Flowey, really reminds me of Monty Python sketches, like Terry Gilliam sketches.
Oh, 100%.
The way that they look. Yeah, he attacks you with vines and bombs and flamethrower and bees. The bees, and if you hit him, it does 2 damage. But once those souls that you mentioned, Ben, once they help you, they begin to heal you. They let you do more damage to him. And eventually he loses all of his defense, his patterns become super easy, and you do beat him, which causes him to just load another save state where he kills you over and over and over.
Yeah, no, it's... I don't know. I don't not like this, because I do like it. I like it a lot. I like the fight, and what really does it for me is the pacifist ending. But eventually we do defeat Flowey with the help of the other souls who revolt against Flowey. And then we're faced with Flowey as this depleted little flower. And Flowey is sitting on the middle of this black screen. And you can choose between fight and mercy. And, Flowey's worn out. And then Flowey's like, I'm going to kill everyone. I'm going to kill everyone you love. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to, all these things. What did you check? Did you keep choosing mercy, or did you choose fight?
I've done both before. If you choose fight, you just kill him right there. You have to choose mercy over and over because, like you said, Ben, he will get progressively more annoyed. Like, why are you being nice to me? I'm going to kill you and kill everybody you love. But then he runs away. And that's the end. It's a bit of not letdown's not the right word. It's an anticlimactic ending considering everything we've went through, because it ends with a phone call from Sans describing the aftermath. This can vary drastically. Like, the dialogue will change, and he'll comment on, like, if you never ate any kind of consumable, if you kept the snowman piece, if you did a genocide but then opted out of it. You know, like, there are like 30 some different variations on how this can go, depending on if you killed any major character or not. All of that can be different. There's a YouTube video that lists them all out. I had no desire to try to get as many of these as possible.
No, and that's just fine. If you want to try things, try for yourself. That's perfectly fine. I killed Flowey, and Flowey said, "I knew you had it in you," with this horrible expression on their face. And I was like, ugh. It was only after he said, "I'll kill everyone you love," and I was like, "I'm sorry, I take issue with that."
Yeah, that's exactly what he wanted. But he does pop up at the end, Flowey does, and he challenges you to get to the end again without killing anybody. So this sets into motion, like we mentioned at the top, there are 3 play styles, 3 routes for the game. Neutral, and this is the order in which you should play them. Neutral, pacifist, and genocide. You cannot start with a true pacifist route. Even if you do pacifist, you get the neutral ending. You have to clear that once to get to the true pacifist.
Yep.
It's recommended to do genocide last because it's the hardest, and also it will change the ending for every subsequent playthrough. Mm-hmm. And Flowey will remind you of this again when you reset. But that's the end of the neutral route.
So, to pivot to pacifist, basically, go back and listen to the very beginning of us starting the story and don't kill anyone. Don't hurt anyone. No touching, no harming. Talk to them. Keep them safe.
And indeed, it's Flowey that suggests to you to go and see Alphys, and he says that maybe she holds the key to your happiness. This is after you do like a pacifist to the very end. And Undine calls you at this point, and she wants you to deliver a letter. So you have to go get that letter from her. It's a love letter to Dr. Alphys.
But we don't know that. We don't dare open it. She said,
well, she says she'll kill you if you open it.
Naturally.
So if you use it, you just get a dialogue box of her saying, "I'll kill you." If you drop it, you could throw it away. If you drop it, she gets pissed off and she gives you like love letter EX, which you just cannot get rid of.
That's really funny.
It's pretty funny. I like that this game like kind of rewards you. It simultaneously rewards you for doing video game things and just seeing what you can do. And then it also kind of comments on that and is like, we know that you're just doing that because you can, because it's an option for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we get this call, and it's a love letter from Undine to Alphys, and you take the letter and you're trying to slip it under the door, and Alphys comes to the door and thinks it's you who has the crush on them, and you guys go on a date at the trash zone because that's how we learn that's how Alphys feels about themselves, basically. Really kind of heavy, but we learn about this later, and we also, it kind of retroactively brings up the fact that Alphys is trying to atone for sins, which we'll get to. That's why Alphys tried to help you so much and seem like a good person, is what we're about to learn about. But you go on this date with Alphys in the dump, and there's all kinds of conversations. Undine does show up, and Alphys is hiding in a trash can at this point. Yeah, how did you feel about this scene? This was not my favorite scene. You do have to still do the cooking lesson, and you still have to date Papyrus no matter what in Pacifist Run. But the dump date scene was not my favorite, Rick. What about you?
No, I mean, I didn't like it. Yeah, I could not bring myself to care about Alphys. I really couldn't. But, at least as a character, how she functions as a character in terms of the backstory, I did like, because as you leave after you do the date, which is just Undine being Undine, Alphys being Alphys. Papyrus shows up in a shirt that says Jog Boy and takes Alphys jogging. But as you leave, Papyrus calls you and says to go see Alphys. when you go, there is a note on the floor basically saying that she's sorry. She needs to face her problems, face her own demons without hiding, and that if no one ever sees her again, she does want to tell everybody, quote unquote, the truth, the capital T truth. So she says, go into the lab that you previously couldn't get into, and you'll see.
It's in the bathroom, or at least what we thought was the bathroom.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, it ends up being an elevator that goes very, very, very deep into the earth. And this was even after Papyrus, who is also at the dump for some reason, says that he's going to train Alphys to feel good about herself. Undyne couldn't comfort her, console her, or anything, so Alphys at home. We go into this elevator, and it leads us to something called the True Lab. This part of the game really freaked me out the first time I did it. It's a little bit eerie down there, I'm going to be honest. There are screens all over the place that have text on them, and they're like logs of things and experiments, and the music's really sick here. I like the music, though it's unsettling.
When you're fighting, so there are ghostly abominations down here that are failed experiments. They're kind of amalgamations of other monsters, and in the background, you'll hear their music being distorted and super slowed down being played. I think the music down here might also ascribe to that too. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not sure.
But the puzzles down here, you have to find 4 color-coded keys to activate the main power so you can proceed through the lab. You also have little screens, as you said, Ben, that show lab notes basically explaining what happened.
And it's really quite unsettling. These amalgamate enemies that we fight are experiments. They are fallen monster souls that Alphys has tried to generate determination to bring them back to life using. And everything went horribly wrong. And, families were waiting on their loved ones to come back. And they did come back to life. They opened their eyes, but they ended up, as Rick, you nail on the head, saying the word abominations.
Yeah, what she did was she found out that determination, quote unquote, was what made human souls so strong. So she tried literally injecting it into corpses, who eventually just kind of melted into horrible monsters, which shamed Alphys. She stopped answering phone calls, asking when people were coming home. She was ignoring Asgore. So she just kind of kept them hidden and was keeping them alive, which she does tell you after, you complete the True Lab. And then she says, I'm going to tell everybody's families and everything. But yeah, that was what was plaguing her for so long. She was keeping these failed experiments of actual dead people down here. This is probably, as far as the canon story goes, this is probably the coolest part to me.
It's so heavy, but it's so, again, the fact that someone wrote this, someone made this giant world of characters and possibilities. And I just thought it was beautiful. After she confesses all of this to you, she feeds these creatures, these monsters that have suffered the way that they have, and you have you get a phone call. It's a voice you've never heard before, and they look forward to seeing you soon. And the elevator brings you back to the throne room area.
And notably, they know your name.
Yes, they do. They're talking to you as the name that you chose, which is fascinating too. But before you fight Asgore, because you're going to do that because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You go through judgment and everything. Sans is proud of you and is you haven't hurt anyone. It's beautiful. Before you fight Asgore, Tori interrupts. Toriel shows up, and along with basically everybody else, and a lot of characters meet for the first time, and it's very, very wholesome. I liked this scene. I don't know about you, Rick, but I really liked all this.
I'm tired of the whole friendship theme and everything, but it was nice. It was nice seeing everybody. It was cool seeing Sans and Toriel meet for real. Papyrus says that it's the worst day of his life because they keep telling bad jokes, which is pretty funny. But what's interesting is somebody pipes up and they're like, well, Papyrus, how did you know to summon everybody here? And he said, oh, that was easy. A talking flower told me to. Uh-huh. At which point, Alphys says, she gets scared, and she's like, a what? Because what we learn, right as we're leaving the True Lab, is that Alphys created Flowey. She wanted to know what would happen if you injected something without a soul with a soul, which is how Flowey came to be. Whose soul, we will learn pretty soon, but Flowey shows up at this point and kind of grabs everybody with his vines, and he says, this is all your fault, and that he's going to keep you here forever because if you quote unquote win the game, you won't play with him anymore.
Mm-hmm. And it's shortly thereafter that after basically taking over everybody else's vessels and everybody else's souls, it turns out that Flowey is the deceased child of Asgore and Toriel. It's Asriel who has found a way to carry on their existence, and they've basically been Flowey the entire time, which really made me uneasy at this reveal the first time. I think it's well written. I really liked this. The fight was absurd, but I like this part.
Yeah, everybody at this point, as Flowey has everybody tied up, comes to your protection. Even minor monsters like Sundare Plane and the volcano monster, they all chime in. But Flowey just takes all of their souls, so all of that, including the 6 human souls, lets him revert to his former form of Asriel. But then he changes pretty quickly, too, into his, fighting form. He's got 3 forms total. This fight is cool, but you can't really lose. You can act in such a way, you can dream or hope. Hope will reduce your damage greatly. Dream will fill up your inventory with Last Dream, which is an item that refills your HP entirely. Mm-hmm. So cool as this is, it's kind of like a moot battle. It doesn't, really, you can't lose, basically. But then he transforms into a final form. You actually can't die here. If you do die, your heart repairs itself, and it just says it refused.
Mm-hmm. You are given the opportunity to actually reach through and help the friends of yours who Flowey, Asriel, is holding hostage. And with each one that you retrieve, you lessen Asriel's power. I mean, it's implied. It's not exactly shown, but it is what's happening.
What's cool about this one, I thought, was as you're saving the souls of your friends, let's say Sans and Papyrus, as you're acting, trying to figure out what to do to save them, you have to act in a way that they'll remember you. So you have to tell a bad pun, or you have to flirt or whatever. And as you're doing that, they're using their actual attacks against you. So Papyrus will use his attacks. Alphys will use Metaton's attacks. Undine will use hers, etc., etc. But you have to save all of them: Sans, Papyrus, Undine, Alphys, Toriel, and Asgore.
Mm-hmm.
But then it says you have to save somebody else.
You have to save Asriel. And I rather liked this scene. I mean, I know that you said that you were kind of tired of the nice stuff, but Asriel's the one who needs saved. And so that becomes your option is save. Act turns into save. And you just keep over and over again saying that you're ready to save them. And the flames start missing you, not unlike what Toriel does at the beginning of the game. And yeah, they're crying and they're just Asriel saying, "Let me win, please, just let me be." And they keep attacking you, and they'll take you all the way down to 1, but it won't kill you. And then there's one point where there's this attack. It's like a Kamehameha, and the decimal point just keeps moving over, so that even if you're at 0.000000001 health out of 20, you're still hanging on.
Yeah, and then this next subversion I think is super cool, because Asriel says he doesn't want to lose you. And after all of this, he reverts back to his normal self, Kid Asriel, and he's real sad. And he calls you by your name, so whatever you named your character. But then he says, "But I know that's not really who you are. I know that your name here died a long time ago." So he's kind of dealing with his loss of his brother, that original human that fell down. And he asks you your name, which you reply is Frisk. So this subversion is super cool because this whole time you get to name your silent protagonist, and it's basically a husk for you as a player. It's a representation. But then you learn that your role actually has already come and went. That's not actually who you are. You were the original human that fell down, and you were the one that died that Asriel tried to save. I thought that was super cool.
Oh, it was a power move, I thought, and the fact that you can empathize with that position because you heard the story. you know that you died, and you know that it doesn't make your interactions as Frisk any less. I thought that was a really cool move. But you end up having this conversation, this very long conversation with Asriel, but Asriel, losing all of the life force from the souls they were holding on to, is depleting quickly, recognizing the horrible actions and that they hurt so many people. And then after a long monologue, and even after like a little bit of a hug, they pass. I don't remember exactly in this moment how they pass, though, Richard.
Asriel says that without everybody's souls, he can't retain this form. He's going to turn back into Flowey. And then he says he's not going to be himself, so he leaves before that happens.
Right. Yeah, I knew that much. But I forget if he turned into a flower or if he turned to dust. That was the only thing that escaped my brain in this moment.
No, he turns back into Flowey, I'm fairly positive.
He walks away, that's what it is. He walks into the light, and we don't see what happens. But it is basically assumed that he turns back into Flowey, because he can no longer sustain that form. And then everyone's trying to wake you up. It's been a bad dream, Frisk. Wake up, Frisk.
And, I think at first glance it would be easy to say, oh, that's bullshit, it was all a dream. It really wasn't, though, because once you learn that, like, save and load states in this universe exist, what this is it's like, it's another multi-worlds theory, kind of like Bioshock Infinite without the Ken Levine-isms. It's, the timeline has now changed, because when you wake up, like you said, Ben, everybody is calling you Frisk, like, they're none the wiser of what happened. You kind of changed the arc, the trajectory of that timeline.
Mm-hmm. But whenever you are on your feet again, you talk to everyone and say like, oh, and they're like, oh, we don't know exactly what happened, but there was a flower, and then everything went white, but the barrier's now gone. So they all go to the barrier together, and you see the monsters living harmoniously, in the human world again, which is really touching and everything.
And they're all watching the sunset together for the first time in their lives, which is really nice.
And Sans is like, yep, that's the sun. It's interesting that Sans already, like, is able to tell everyone these things, which I just love. But you can choose to either, go off and do your own thing, or you can live with Toriel. And there's no wrong choice here, really. But the wrong choices come up in the next playthrough.
Yeah, so this is where this game ends. This playthrough ends. I guess one thing that we didn't talk about with Sans, if you satisfy some various scenarios, you can get into Sans' room, which happens by like repeatedly doing that judgment scene. And each time you reload it, he'll tell you like, here's the passcode. Just kidding. Here's the real passcode. Okay, but here's the real passcode. And you can get into his room. But you learn that like Sans is well aware of like, this is why he's got the quantum like time mechanics books. Like he knows about the save states. He's able to see these fluctuations within the timeline. So he's self-aware of all this. So like you said, Ben, it's no surprise that he knows about the sun, because like he's the closest thing to a deity that I think this game has.
I love Sans for that reason. From a funny standpoint, I got that he was funny and people loved him, but from a deity standpoint, I think he's amazing. Shall we jump right into this, last section?
Yeah. So, Ben, you said that you didn't complete Genocide before. Is that true?
That's true. I got to Undying the Undying.
Yeah, so the way that the Genocide runs work is that you have to exhaust every single area by killing each and every monster. And the way that you do that is just like grinding. You walk around and fight until you get into a random battle with nobody that shows up, and it'll say, but nobody came, which gives you the indication that you're on the Genocide track. Now, if you do this and stay on this with every single area, people's dialogues towards you change, and they like don't recognize you as a human. They see you as like some kind of different monster. Sans is really he's not aggressive towards you, but like he really tells you that you're a piece of shit like the entire time. I think the writing is really good. Like they really, really make it work. And that's the whole game. It's famous for the Sans fight. Sans is by far the hardest boss in the game. It makes use of the strategy where like it's not possible to win the first time through. You kind of have to learn his patterns. Similar to Dark Souls, you're going to die a whole lot. I generally don't like that as a strategy, but it didn't really bother me here.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked up the Sans fight at all?
Oh, I watched the entire playthrough of Genocide just so I could understand it. And yeah, you have to be rehearsed to get it down.
Rehearsed is a good word for it. And in the fight too, Sans makes use of he will save and reload to get you to different points to kind of trip you up and everything. It's funny because he's only got 1 HP, but your attacks just miss him constantly. Like, you only hit him once at the very end, which is when the fight ends. Yeah, and then you end up kind of destroying everything, and evil Azrael talks to you, and it's a whole deal.
Well, so basically everything that we've talked about in Pacifist and Neutral is the same, except, again, we're killing everyone. The save points tell us how many people are left to kill. There's this theme, but nobody came, which is the Flowey theme slowed down 1,000%.
Yeah, the Genocide route is a big comment on video gamers doing video gamey things, kind of like a slave chooses, or a man chooses, a slave obeys in BioShock 1. At one point during the battle, Sans will say, "I know your type. You're very determined, aren't you? You'll never give up, even if there's absolutely no benefit to persevering whatever. If I can make that clear, no matter what, you'll just keep going, not out of any desire for good or evil, but just because you think you can. And because you can, you have to." And that's the entire premise of the Genocide is, you have the option, so do it, because video game. And then it's a big comment on that. And, I don't think it is as meaningful a comment or a reflection on it, such as BioShock or such as Disco Elysium, but I don't think it's bad in any sense of the word. I think it's well observed.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Throughout this entire run, as you said, Rick, that Sans is kind of, I don't want to say being mean to you, but he sees what you're doing. Toriel's final words are, "I see now who I was protecting by keeping you here, not you, but them." The whole mood of the game just gets wicked, and not a good wicked. "Let's turn everyone to dust," is what Flowey says to you, and then the voice says, "That's a wonderful idea," and it's spoken, which is kind of unsettling too, because we never hear voices. Yeah, it's really forlorn music, and it's it kind of gives me chills. And the one thing that Sans does say early on in the game is, if you keep going on the way that you are, you're gonna have a bad time. And he disappears. Yeah,
that's a theme throughout this. He says at the beginning of the fight, let me find it here. He's got a lot of quotes in this fight. He talks about knowing that you're just starting new save files by saying, "Our report showed a massive anomaly in the time-space continuum, timelines jumping left and right, stopping and starting, until suddenly everything ends. That's your fault, isn't it? You can't understand how this feels, knowing that one day without any warning, it's all going to be reset." But earlier on, he says, "So I've got a question for you. Do you think even the worst person can change? That everyone could be a good person if they just try? All right, well, here's a better question. Do you want to have a bad time? Because if you take another step forward, you are really not going to like what happens next. Well, sorry, old lady. This is why I never make promises." And that's when the fight begins.
It's sick.
Interestingly enough, do you know Hugh Neutron from Jimmy Neutron?
Yeah.
His voice actor is very active on Twitter, and he's a very funny guy. Sometimes he will read quotes that people send him as Hugh Neutron, and somebody sent him that Sans quote, and he read it as Hugh Neutron. I have it saved on my phone. It's one of the funniest things ever.
I believe it.
It's really good.
I bet it's awesome.
Do you want to have a bad time?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting run. I'm glad I watched it instead. Snowden is hiding because you're a monster. You can steal from the store. Nobody's in Grillby's. It's all just...
Sorry, I think the only shopkeeper that's still around is the turtle guy.
That's
because
correct.
He's not afraid of you.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm old. I'm going to go anyway, so I'm not scared of you." During the papyrus fight at the end, he says that he still believes that you can be a great person and he'll provide guidance. He says he still believes it. Come on. The Echo Flower, they're all silent. There are no monsters. like just hanging around, no NPCs. The duck doesn't even show up, and Mad Dummy is glad and basically spares you. Like, ugh.
Yeah, it's a really... I mean, I think it complements the game really well. I know it's tough to get through, but it's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. And all of the monsters have, like, evacuated. And it really, makes the game a lot more brief. So your goal is just to grind, and it's uncomfortable. But yeah, even some of the big fights like Muffet and Metaton Neo are one-hit KOs because of how powerful you are. Like, that's insane. Because you've leveled up so much.
Yeah, and if memory serves, I believe the boss fights on the Genocide route are different. Like, they get harder.
Undyne the Undying annihilated me. I never got past it on my old computer for that reason, because they were so hard. It's worth saying that, we have the Sans fight, and it's ridiculously hard. Flowey becomes uncomfortable with you, and that kind of gave me some shivers. Flowey became uncomfortable before the full Sans fight. You felt your sins crawling on your back. Ugh. And then after you beat him, he asks Papyrus if he wants anything and dies off screen.
Yeah, it also appears that he's bleeding. There's been some speculation about whether that's blood or like injected determination, because like Sans is basically a god. I don't know that that's ever been proven one way or the other, but it's interesting to think about. It would definitely explain how Sans got these godlike abilities.
Yeah.
Because the only other person that has them is Flowey, and Flowey has determination within him, whether it's through the injection of Azrael's soul into Flowey or by hoarding other souls.
Yeah. And Flowey through this whole run has been solving puzzles for you so that you just walk forward and don't have to do anything else.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very eerie. In one of the last scenes, the king is looking at a flower and he says, "I've never seen a plant cry before."
Yeah, it's good writing. It's good characterization of, the considerations of what it means to go about grinding and just killing whatever you find in typical RPGs and JRPGs.
Yeah, it's rough. And then, it more or less ends with you meeting Chara and basically swallows the world whole, kind of. It's really a weird way to end.
Yeah, it ends with like a black screen, and you have to wait there for I think like 10 minutes before you get the option to like reset everything. But even if you do reset everything, you can go through another playthrough and do a true pacifist run, but the ending will always change. It's not as big of a deal as everybody makes it out to be. It's just, you get to the very end, and your character makes like a really creepy face, and there's an evil laugh, and that's it. So it's not a fundamentally different ending, but it is a nice little grace note. It's a nice little capstone on the whole thing.
Rick, I think we've solved Undertale.
Yeah, that's Undertale. That is the game. There's some things that make this game not perfect, but I don't think it gets the hate that it sometimes gets just for being popular. Even with the super 2014 internet humor. Good game.
Well, and there are always going to be monuments to the time in which a game or any piece of art was created, so 2014 humor, not bad. Okay, well, it's, what I mean, though. It's just,
I know
it's eternally there.
Eternally there is a great way to put it. Definitely, I think we both recommend this game pretty highly, huh?
We do, and I'm looking forward to starting Deltarune Part 1 again, and then so I can play Deltarune Part 2.
And I will do that at some point, but I definitely do want to do it.
So we appreciate all of you who have listened to us thus far. We appreciate if you hung around and listened to us talk about the entirety of Undertale, more or less. There are a few ways you can reach out to us. The first of which is something I'm going to share with you now, and it's called our Instagram. Our Instagram handle is pixelprojectradio. That's who we are. That's what we are. Pixel Project Radio podcast. That extra word needs to be in there. That's my apologies. Rick, how do they find us on the Twitter?
Our Twitter is incredibly inactive because I have found that it's just not a good way to find new people that want to listen. But if you want to reach out and ask us questions like our friend Jenny did, shout out to Jenny if she's actually still listening to this, like when are we going to make a Discord, you can find us at Pixel Project Pod. And the answer is yes, we will be making a Discord. Not right away, but we definitely will be.
And our Gmail, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, is pixelprojectradio@gmail.com. That's us. Find us. We're here for you.
Yes, and if we might make one request, please, if you like what we're doing, share us with your friends, word of mouth, share some links. People don't like to do their own searching, I have found. Give them a link that they can just one click and they're there. Really helps us out. Really helps us out if you give us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Podcast Addict. But most of all, we just want to thank you for listening. Without you, we would just be two friends shooting the shit.
I like shooting the shit with you.
Yeah, no, I like shooting the shit with you too. It's a lot of fun. But it's also fun to make something.
Absolutely.
Make entertainment for people.
Share us with your friends and your family. Share us with someone that would be unexpected by having a video game podcast suggested to them.
Your youth pastor. The milkman.
Harry Connick Jr.
Yes. Anybody that shares this with Harry Connick Jr., send us proof, and we will send you a special something.
We will, we swear. Rick, you ready to call it a day, buddy?
I'm ready to call it a day. 3 hours of Undertale. Thanks again for sticking around. My name is Rick Firestone.
My name is Ben Bugale.
And you have been listening to Pixel Project Radio. We are determined to sign off now, so we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
See you.